Mississippi is a land of swaying cypresses, slow rivers, and old towns that carry the weight of history. Among the quiet streets and moss-draped oaks lie churches ancient, sacred, and Sumtamisa haunted. Tonight, we will explore 25 of Mississippi's most haunted churches, where the bells ring themselves, shadows move without a source, and spirits linger long after the congregation has left. Some churches echo with the prayers of the living, others with the cries of the restless dead. As we walk among these sacred grounds, listen carefully. The wind through the steeples, the creak of the pews, and the tolling of the bells may tell stories no history book dares to record. St. Maria's Catholic Church in Natchez stands quietly on a rise overlooking the Mississippi River, its brick walls weathered by more than a century of storms, sunlight, and whispered prayers. During the day it seems serene, even peaceful, as if time itself pauses out of respect for its age. But when night falls, the church takes on a different presencia, one that locals still hesitate to speak about, even in the warmth of daylight. For St. Maria's has long carried a reputation of unexplained midnight bells, wandering shadows, and the lingering presence of spirits who never left their pews. The church was built in the late 1800s, during a period when Natchez was growing rapidly and seeking to shape its identity. Workers who laid the foundation swore they felt odd tremors in the earth as they dug, as if the land itself were restless. Some even claimed they heard murmured voices rising out of the soil, though none dared investigate. But when the church opened its doors, the unsettling incidents did not stop, they simply shifted from the construction grounds to the sacred walls of St. Maria's. One of the earliest documented reports came from a priest who lived on the property shortly after the church's completion. According to his journal, he awoke several nights in a row to the sound of the church bells ringing at precisely midnight. Each time he rushed outside, lantern in hand, to find the rope still hanging still. No breeze stirred the air. No person stood near the tower. Yet the bell continued to echo across the rooftops of Natchez, rolling like thunder through the quiet streets before fading into silence. He reported the phenomenon to the bishop, but no explanation was ever found. The bell mechanisms were inspected repeatedly, but nothing was broken, misaligned, or faulty. Over the decades, the midnight ringing became a chilling tradition. Locals simply accepted that when the bell sounded at 12, it was not the living who rang it. More unsettling than the bells, however, are the sightings that have occurred inside the church itself. Visitors who enter alone, especially toward evening, have described a heavy atmosphere as if hundreds of unspoken hymns still hang in the air. There are cold pockets that drift across the pews, sudden drops in temperature that feel almost like the passing of someone unseen. Tourists taking photographs have found strange smudges in their images, silhouettes shaped like kneeling figures, even when no one else was present. For many years, the most common story involved a single shadow that appeared in the front pew. Parishioners said they would see the outline of a persona, sometimes a man, other times a woman bowed deeply in prayer. The figure never moved but gave the impression of intense devotion, as though pleading for forgiveness or guidance. When approached, however, the shadow dissolved into thin air. No footsteps, no rustling clothing, no sound at all. One woman who encountered the figure described the experience as a walking into a breath of cold smoke. It curled around her and then vanished, leaving behind an overwhelming feeling of sorrow she could not explain. Some of the older residents of Natchez believe the shadows belonged to members of the early congregation. During the late 19th century, a severe fever outbreak swept through the area, claiming many lives. Families who prayed at St. Maria's lost children, parents, and neighbors within weeks. Records show that several victims spent their last healthy days kneeling before the altar, begging for mercy or strength. Local folklore suggests that their spirits returned, tethered not by tragedy but by faith, lingering in the sanctuary they loved. One of the most dramatic encounters happened to a caretaker who worked at the church for more than 20 years. He often stayed long after the evening services to clean the pews and check the windows. One night, as he locked the side door, he heard soft footsteps across the wooden floor near the altar. Assuming someone had stayed behind, he called out, but no voice answered. He approached with his flashlight raised, the beam sweeping across the marble floor and golden candlesticks. Then he saw a figure kneeling at the altar rail, its head bowed. Its form looked solida, almost tangiblia, but it had no features, only the shape of a person carved out of darkness. When he stepped closer, the shadow lifted its head as if noticing him, and in an instant it simply ceased to exist. The caretaker resigned a month later. Another unexplained event occurred during a midnight mass held many years ago for a special feast day. The bell tower suddenly rang out 3 sharp tolls, each louder than the last. The congregation froze, startled, but before anyone could react, several people gasped. They claimed to see at least 6 shadowy figures kneeling, spaced evenly along the front pew. The shapes stayed perfectly still throughout the bell strikes, and then disappeared the moment silence returned. Many who were present still refused to discuss that night. Despite these events, St. Maria's remains a cherished place for the community. Weddings are held there, children are baptized, and families come to light candles in memory of loved ones. Some even say that the spirits who linger mean no harm, that they, too, seek peace. Others believe they are watching, waiting, or simply unable to leave the sanctuary that defined their earthly lives. Today, anyone who steps inside St. Maria's after sunset might notice the air growing cold or feel a shiver crawl down their spine. And if they stay long enough, they may hear the distant echo of the midnight bell, ringing not for the living, but for those who never stopped praying. First Presbyterian Church in Jackson stands as one of the city's most enduring landmarks, a towering sanctuary built in the 1800s when the community was still growing around dirt roads and horse-drawn wagons. Its steeple cuts sharply into the sky, its stone walls thick with history, its doors heavy from more than a century of use. Its stone walls thick with history, its doors heavy from more than a century of use. Its doors heavy from more than a century of use. But no matter how familiar the building may seem in daylight, the church carries an atmosphere that shifts dramatically once the sun goes down. The church carries an atmosphere that shifts dramatically once the sun goes down. To many locals, it is a place where the living and the unseen overlap, a church known not only for its past, but for the mysteries that still echo through its empty halls. The most famous of these occurrences involves the organ, a massive instrument that was installed shortly after construction was completed. Its pipes stretch high along the rear wall, towering over the pews like silent sentinels. Yet those who have worked in the church or visited during quiet hours claim it is far from silent. There are countless stories of faint organ music drifting across the sanctuary when no organist is present, the notes soft and hesitant, as though someone is practicing a hymn they no longer remember fully. The melodies, witnesses say, arena the bold, confident chords heard during Sunday services, but something more fragile long, wavering tones that seem to come from another time entirely. One custodian who worked at the church for decades described entering the sanctuary late one evening to lock the doors. As he stepped inside, a faint tune floated down from the balcony. He recognized it instantly as a hymn rarely sung anymore. At first he assumed the organist had returned. But when he climbed the stairs, the balcony was empty. The organ keys were still. The air felt icy, and the custodian said it felt as though someone had just moved past him. That night marked the first of many encounters he would have, each one leaving him more convinced that the church's long-departed musicians still returned to play. Some believe the source of the music is connected to a tragic story from the late 19th century. According to local legend, a young organist who served the church for years passed away unexpectedly, leaving behind a grieving congregation. She had been devoted to her music, often staying late to practice after everyone else had gone home. There are those who whisper that her spirit still lingers, her unfinished hymns drifting through the sanctuary on quiet nights. Whether the tale is true or simply folklore, the mysterious organ music continues to be reported regularly. Yet the organ is far from the only strange occurrence within First Presbyterian Church. Shadowy shapes have been spotted gliding between the pews. Figures that seem to move with purpose, yet vanish the moment a witness attempts to follow. Some describe the shadows as tall and thin, others as small and bent, but all agree they move silently, like silhouettes detached from the bodies they once belonged to. Visitors who walk through the sanctuary alone at dusk often report the unsettling sensation of being watched, as though someone is seated in a nearby pew even when the church is completely empty. One of the most chilling stories came from a group of volunteers who were preparing decorations for a holiday service. As they worked in the front of the sanctuary, arranging wreaths along the walls, one woman suddenly froze. She claimed she saw a figuria, a man-shaped shadowy, standing several rows back, watching them. When she blinked, the figure was gone. Moments later, another volunteer felt a cold gust of air sweep past her legs, though none of the doors or windows were open. The group left shortly afterward, abandoning their work until morning. The bell tower of First Presbyterian is equally mysterious. Though the bell is normally rung only for scheduled services or special occasions, it has been known to toll at unexpected times. Residents living nearby have heard it ring softly in the dead of night, a single chime breaking the silence. Those who have been inside the church when the bell sounded say it does not ring with force, but with a slow, deliberate tone, as though someone is gently pulling the rope. When checked, the tower is always empty, and the mechanism shows no signs of malfunction. To this day, no one has been able to explain why the bell tolls when no living hand is near it. Some believe these strange events stem from the church's long history. During the Civil War, the building was used as a shelter and temporary hospital when violence swept through the region. Many wounded soldiers were brought inside its walls, some never leaving again. Historians wonder whether the lingering sorrow from those years may have woven itself into the stone, leaving behind echoes of the past that still replay themselves. Others think the answer lies in the strength of the congregation's devotion over the decades. Thousands of people have prayed within the sanctuary, seeking comfort, forgiveness, or hope. Some residents suggest that powerful emotion, especially grief, can leave an imprint strong enough to outlive its source. If this is true, then the shadows and music may not be spirits at all, but residual energy repeating itself like a memory carved into the building. Still, those who have experienced these occurrences firsthand rarely describe them as frightening. Instead, there is a quiet sadness in their tone, as though the church is not haunted by malevolent forces, but by the lingering presence of souls who simply never stopped attending. The faint hymns, the drifting silhouettes, the solitary tolls of the bell all feel like remnants of devotion rather than signs of danger. Even today, as the sanctuary fills with worshippers each week, some claim they can sense the unseen congregation blending faintly with the living. The air feels heavier, the silence deeper. And when the last person leaves at night, the church does not truly rest. Somewhere in the darkness, a soft note from the organ might rise again, echoing through the empty halla, a lonely hymn played for no one, and for someone, all at once. St. Joseph Catholic Church in Biloxi stands quietly near the Gulf Coast, its white steeple rising above the surrounding streets like a steadfast guardian watching over the shoreline. For more than a century, it has been a refuge for fishermen, sailors, and families whose lives are tied to the sea. The scent of salt water hangs constantly in the air, and when storms roll in from the Gulf, the church seems to brace itself against the wind like a ship sailing through violent waves. But long after the storms pass, something else lingers here, something older, quieter, and harder to explain. Locals insist that the spirits of sailors lost to the sea still return to St. Joseph's, searching for peace they never found on the open water. Of all the strange events reported at the church, the bell tower has earned the greatest reputation. The bell is heavy, cast in bronze, and requires a strong hand to pull. Yet on calm, windless nights when the water is still and the air barely moves, the bell sometimes rings with a violent force that shakes the rafters. Witnesses say the sound is different from a normal toll. It comes in uneven bursts, as though someone is yanking the rope in desperation. The echoes roll out over the dark streets of Biloxi and drift toward the shoreline, where fishermen swear they can hear the ringing bounce across the waves. Many believe the phenomenon dates back to one of the most tragic storms in the region's history. Long before modern tracking methods, a sudden hurricane barreled toward the Gulf Coast with almost no warning. Entire fleets were caught offshore. Families gathered inside St. Joseph's that night, praying as the wind screamed against the walls. When the storm finally passed, dozens of sailors never returned. Some bodies were recovered days later, washed ashore miles from home. Others vanished completely, swallowed by the furious sea. It is said that the church bell rang on its own the morning after the storm, sounding mournful, as if announcing deaths no one had yet confirmed. Since then, the bell's unexplained ringing has been linked to the spirits of those lost sailors. Some townspeople believe they returned to the church that once sheltered their families, trying to signal their presence or warn of danger. Others say the ringing is a cry for help, forever echoing through time, repeating the frantic struggle of that night long ago. The fog surrounding the church adds to its haunting reputation. St. Josephus is known for becoming eerily obscured during these moments, its outline fading into a pale blur. People walking past have reported seeing shapes move inside the fogatol, faint silhouettes that resemble men in old maritime clothing. They appear near the steps, drift along the walkway, or stand motionless by the side entrance, before melting into the mist. One fisherman shared a story that has been repeated many times. He was returning home late at night, the fog so thick he could barely see his own hands. As he approached St. Josephus, he noticed a figure standing by the main wooden doors. The person seemed to be drenched, water dripping onto the stone path. Assuming the man needed help, the fisherman called out to him. The figure slowly lifted an arm as though to wave, but as the fisherman stepped closer, it dissolved into the fog, leaving only the faint scent of seawater behind. Another witness was a parishioner who passed by the church after an early morning storm. Fog clung to the ground, swirling around her legs. As she walked, she noticed 3 figures kneeling near the grotto outside. They looked like dark silhouettes bowing their heads in prayer. Thinking they were early visitors, she approached to greet them. But when she got within a few feet, the figures rose slowly, turned toward her, and vanished. She later said that although she felt no threat, the sadness in the air was overwhelming, as if the fog itself carried grief. Inside St. Joseph's, the atmosphere often feels heavy after nights of strange activity. Parishioners entering early in the morning describe a lingering chill near the pews and a faint sound of dripping water, even though the floors are dry. Some have reported the distinct scent of salt water at the back of the church, as though someone soaked from the Gulf had walked inside moments before. A former priest once admitted privately that he occasionally sensed unseen visitors during late hours. More than once he heard the bell rope creaking in the tower when no one else was present. Other times he felt a passing breeze inside the sanctuary, cold and damp like air rising off open water. He believed the spirits meant no harm, but were drawn to the church by faith and memory. The sea may have taken their bodies, he once said, but their souls returned to the last place that had offered them comfort. For many, the hauntings of St. Josephus are simply part of the town's relationship with the Gulf, an eternal reminder of those who lived and died by the water. Fishermen still make the sign of the cross when they pass the church before heading out, hoping the spirits will watch over them rather than warn them. Even now, on perfectly still nights, the bell sometimes rings out across the quiet town. Dogs howl. Porch lights flicker on. And along the fog-covered streets near the shoreline, some claim they can see the shapes of lost sailors drifting past St. Josephus Dorsa, their watery journey unfinished. Their final prayer carried by the sound of a bell tolling for no one. St. Peter's Episcopal Church in Oxford rises gracefully from the center of town, a historic stone structure built in the 1800s and known for its quiet beauty during the day. Sunlight filters through its stained glass windows in soft shades of blue and gold, casting warm colors across the wooden pews. But once night falls, the church seems to take on a different character entirely. Locals have long whispered that St. Peter's is not only a place of worship, but a place where echoes of the past continue to move, unseen yet deeply felt. The most well-known phenomenon occurs near the altar. Shadowy figures, believed to be former parishioners, have been seen standing in silent reverence long after the building has been locked for the night. These apparitions typically appear as tall silhouettes, vague in shape, yet unmistakably human. Witnesses say the shadows seem to gather near the altar rail as though attending a service that never ends. They don't move quickly or aggressively. Instead, they stand as if in prayer, flickering slightly like candlelight. When anyone approaches, even from a distance, the figures dissolve into the darkness, leaving only the faint impression that someone had been there moments before. One church volunteer recounted a night when she stayed late arranging flowers for an upcoming service. As she stepped back to admire her work, she felt a strange stillness fall over the sanctuary. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw figures standing in the front row of 3 shadows lined perfectly beside each other. She thought someone had come in without her hearing the door, but when she turned to greet them, the pew was empty. The shadows had vanished, but the lingering cold in the air felt unmistakably real. The bell tower at St. Peter's adds another layer to its haunted reputation. The bells have been secured for decades, only used during scheduled services or special ceremonies. Yet there are many nights when the bells ring repeatedly, their chimes echoing through the quiet Oxford streets. The ringing comes in rapid bursts, as though someone is pulling on the ropes with urgency, though the ropes themselves are tightly fastened. Residents living nearby often wake to the sound, assuming some late-night practice is underway, only to discover the tower completely empty. A former sexton described one particularly unsettling incident. He was locking up late at night when the bell began to ring above him. Startled, he rushed up the narrow staircase, convinced a prankster had slipped inside. But when he reached the top, the bell was still swinging on its own, its clapper moving without any visible force. He grabbed the rope to stop it, but the rope felt slack and cold, as though it hadn't been pulled at all. The bell continued to move for several seconds before finally settling, leaving the sexton shaken and convinced that something beyond explanation had caused it. Perhaps the most unnerving experiences reported at St. Peter's are the footsteps. The nave, with its long aisle and polished wooden floors, often becomes a stage for phantom movement late at night. Footsteps echo down the center aisle, slow and deliberate, as though someone is walking toward the altar. At times the steps seem to come from behind, making those working alone in the church feel as if they are not truly alone. When they turn, no one is there, and the sound stops instantly, only to resume moments later in another part of the sanctuary. A choir director recalled practicing alone on a stormy evening. Rain pounded against the stained glass, and thunder rumbled in the distance. As she rehearsed, she heard footsteps approaching from behind. Thinking it was the rector, she called out, but no voice answered. The footsteps grew louder, echoing clearly across the empty room, until they were just a few feet away. When she spun around, expecting to see someone, the aisle was empty. But she swore she felt the presence of someone standing just beside her, as if listening to her song. Stories like these have circulated through Oxford for generations, leading many to speculate about the origins of the church's lingering spirits. Some believe the shadows are the souls of parishioners from the early years of the church, people who attended nearly every service in life and simply returned to continue their devotion in death. Others suggest the spirits might belong to those buried in the nearby cemetery, drawn back to the place where they once worshipped. A few even think the church itself has absorbed the energy of centuries of prayers, funerals, weddings, and hymns, creating echoes that replay themselves long after their source has faded. Despite the eerie occurrences, St. Peter's has never earned a reputation for malevolence. Those who encounter the shadows or hear the footsteps describe a sense of solemnity rather than threat. It is as if the church hosts an invisible congregation, one that attends services beyond the reach of time. Some parishioners find comfort in the idea, believing that the spirits reflect loyalty, not unrest, that the people who built and loved the church simply never left it. Even today, if someone stands quietly near the altar late at night, they might notice a faint shimmer in the air or the shape of a figure kneeling in prayer. Outside, the bells may suddenly ring without warning, their sound carrying across the darkened streets. And in the stillness of the nave, footsteps may echo once more, reminding all who hear them that, at St. Peter's Episcopal Church, the past walks very close behind the present. Holy Trinity Church in Vicksburg stands quietly on a rise above the city, its Gothic spire reaching into the sky as though trying to pierce the veil between past and present. At first glance, it appears peaceful: warm brick walls, arched windows, and a graveyard shaded by sprawling oak trees. But the deeper one looks, the more the weight of history presses down. Vicksburg was one of the most brutal battlegrounds of the Civil War, and Holy Trinity became a silent witness to the suffering that unfolded around it. Today, many believe the church still carries the echoes of those days, manifested in spirits that never found rest. The most haunting stories come from those who have stepped inside after the last light of day fades. Visitors report seeing ghostly figures of Confederate soldiers kneeling in the pews, their shapes flickering like candle flames caught in a draft. Some appear fully formed, uniforms tattered, heads bowed as if in prayer or remorse. Others are little more than shadows, hunched and unmoving. Many describe the air inside the church growing noticeably colder as soon as the apparitions appear, as if the soldiers' grief brings with it a winter chill that sunlight cannot touch. One caretaker who has served the church for more than 20 years recounts a night she will never forget. She came in at dusk to turn off the lights and check the sanctuary before locking up. As she stepped inside, the golden light filtering through the stained glass windows was fading. In that dim glow, she saw at least half a dozen figures scattered among the pews. They sat or knelt, shoulders slumped, ghostly hands clasped together. She froze, unable to breathe. The figures did not look at her. They seemed trapped in a moment she could not understand. When she blinked, they vanished, leaving only the faint scent of smoke and gunpowder lingering in the air. The bells of Holy Trinity have their own mysterious reputation. The tower rises high above the church grounds, and the bell inside is heavy enough that it should only ring when a strong wind catches it or when someone pulls the rope. Yet, many evenings at dusk, just as the sun sinks below the horizon, the bell tolls clearly through the quiet streets of Vicksburg. Residents who live nearby claim the sound is unmistakably deep, resonant, and utterly out of place when the evening is perfectly still. Historians believe this phenomenon may tie back to the siege of Vicksburg, when the city was under near-constant bombardment for weeks. During that time, the church bells rang frequently, summoning people to safety or signaling incoming danger. It is said that one final toll rang out the night the siege ended, a somber announcement of surrender. Some believe the bell continues to echo that moment in time, ringing even now to honor the fallen or to remind the living of a chapter that cannot be forgotten. The graveyard surrounding Holy Trinity Church adds another layer of mystery. Tombstones dating back more than a century lean slightly under the weight of time, moss climbing over the carved names. At night, the graveyard becomes a place of uneasy silencia broken only by what some claim are faint cries drifting between the trees. Witnesses describe hearing moans, whispers, or the soft sobs of wounded soldiers. The sounds are faint but distinct, rising and fading like a breeze that carries pain instead of air. One visitor, a Civil War enthusiast, once walked through the graveyard just as dusk fell. As he moved between the stones reading the inscriptions, he heard what sounded like someone gasping for breath. The sound was so close he instinctively turned, expecting to see another person nearby. The graveyard was empty. Moments later came another sound, a soft, desperate cry, followed by silence so complete it felt unnatural. He left quickly, shaken and convinced he had walked into a moment still echoing from the 1860s. Some locals say these cries come from the spirits of the wounded who were brought to Holy Trinity-esque grounds during the siege. The church served as refuge and temporary shelter, and many soldiers took their final breaths beneath the very trees that now shade the graves. Others believe the spirits are not confined to the graveyard, but move freely between the grounds and the sanctuary, caught between two worlds as they seek peace. Inside the church, subtle signs of their presence continue to appear. Footsteps echo in empty hallways. Doors creak open when no breeze is present. Sometimes the faint sound of whispered prayers drifts through the pews, as though the soldiers are still seeking forgiveness or solace. Parishioners have reported feeling a sudden heaviness while kneeling near the altar, as if someone were standing beside them, sharing their prayer. Despite these unsettling encounters, Holy Trinity does not carry an aura of danger. Instead, there is a deep sense of melancholy that surrounds the church, a feeling woven into its walls by the tragedies it witnessed. Many who visit say the spirits seem less like restless ghosts and more like lingering memories, replaying themselves quietly in the background of modern life. The church remains an active place of worship, filled with light, music, and community. But for those who know its history, the flickering shadows, the dusk bell, and the ghostly cries link the past and present in a way few other places can. At Holy Trinity Church, the line between history and haunting is thin, and sometimes, as the sun dips, and the air grows still. The past returns. To kneel in the pews. Once more. First Baptist Church in Hattiesburg has stood for more than a century, its red brick walls weathering storms, wars, and generations of worship. By day, it appears warm and inviting, a place where sunlight pours through tall windows and the steady hum of community life fills the halls. But when the doors close and the congregation files out, the church becomes something very different. In the stillness of night, it seems to awaken with echoes of the pasta voices that no longer belong to the living and shadows that move with purpose through the sanctuary. Visitors who have toured the church after hours often leave with unsettling stories. The most common reports involve shadowy shapes that drift among the pews. These figures have no clear form. They shift and stretch like silhouettes cast by a flickering flame. Some appear as tall, slender outlines moving slowly down the center aisle. Others dart between pews with startling speed, vanishing the moment a flashlight beam lands on them. Witnesses describe the movements as deliberate, as though the shadows are attending a service that only they can hear. One night custodian shared a chilling encounter that has become part of the town's whispered lore. He was sweeping near the altar long after everyone else had gone home. The sanctuary was dim, lit only by the faint glow of a street lamp outside. As he worked, he noticed movement in his peripheral visione, a dark shape sliding along the far wall. But then the figure turned down the aisle and glided silently between the rows of pews. The custodian called out, thinking a visitor might have accidentally been locked inside. The shape paused, then dissolved into nothingness, leaving the air strangely cold. He finished his work quickly that night, and avoided the sanctuary alone from then on. But shadows are not the only strange phenomena at First Baptist Church. Many have reported hearing what they describe as ghostly sermons of voices rising and falling as if delivered by an unseen pastor. These sermons often occur late at night, when the church is completely empty. The words are usually indistinct, blending into a low murmur that fills the sanctuary like a distant radio broadcast. Sometimes, however, witnesses claim to hear clear phrases, snippets of scripture or fragments of a prayer. A former church secretary once stayed late to finish paperwork. As she sat at her desk, she heard muffled voices coming from the sanctuary. At first she assumed a meeting was running later than scheduled. But when she entered the room, the pews were empty and the lights were off. The voices continued, echoing faintly from the pulpit. She felt the vibrations of sound through the wooden floor, though no one was standing there. Terrified, she backed out slowly. But the moment she stepped into the hallway, the voices stopped abruptly, leaving the building in heavy silence. Some believe these ghostly sermons are remnants of powerful moments from the church's past. First Baptist has a long history of emotional revivals, impassioned preaching, and fervent prayer meetings. Many locals say the walls soaked up the intensity of those gatherings, replaying the energy long after the people are gone. Others think the voices belong to former pastors who devoted their lives to the congregation, returning in spirit to continue their work. The church's bell tower also plays a major role in its eerie reputation. The bells are normally rung only during daytime services, and the mechanism is carefully maintained. Yet residents living near the church often hear the bells clanging loudly in the dead of night. The sound is sudden and startling, cutting through the quiet neighborhoods like a warning or a call. Dogs bark, lights flick on in nearby homes, and people peer through curtains expecting to see someone at the church. But when they investigate, the bell tower is locked, the grounds are empty. The building stands still beneath the moonlight. One resident described being awakened at exactly 3 a.m. by a series of frantic bell strikes. The sound was so forceful that it rattled the windows of her home. She rushed outside, fearing a fire or emergency. But the streets were empty, and the church loomed silently against the sky. The air was calm and no wind strong enough to swing the heavy bell. When she returned inside, shaken, the ringing continued in her ears as though the sound had carved itself into the night. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the church's hauntings is how frequently they occur. These events are not rare or spaced out over decades. People visiting for weddings, choir practices, or community meetings often describe feeling watched or sensing movement in empty rooms. Some even refuse to walk through the sanctuary alone, claiming the atmosphere becomes heavier the moment they step inside, as if dozens of unseen eyes are following their every move. Yet despite its haunted reputation, First Baptist Church remains loved by the community. Most who experience something unusual do not describe the feeling as threatening. Instead, they sense a lingering sorrow or devotion to echoes of generations who poured their hearts into the church and refused to leave it behind. Some believe the spirits are former parishioners returning to attend services as they once did. Others think the shadows and voices are memories replaying themselves like worn grooves in the building's foundation. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. After dark, the church becomes a place where time seems to fold in on itself. Shadowy shapes glide between pews. Sermons drift through the air from unseen preachers. And the bell rings out across the sleeping town, without a single hand touching the rope. First Baptist Church stands as both sanctuary and mystery, a place where the living gather by dia and the past rises quietly each night. Grace Episcopal Church in Natchez stands like a timeless guardian on a quiet rise above the old streets, its Gothic arches and stained glass windows catching the soft glow of the Mississippi sun by day. But when night falls, everything about the church shifts. The air grows heavy, the silence thickens, and a chilling sense of presence fills the hall. Those who enter after dusk often describe feeling watched, as if the walls themselves remember centuries of whispered prayers, tragedies, and secrets buried deep within the stone. The most frequently reported phenomenon occurs near the choir loft. By daylight, it appears perfectly ordinary, a rows of worn wooden seats, hymnals neatly placed, dust motes drifting through shafts of light. But at night, shadow figures rise from the edges of vision. Witnesses describe them as tall, thin silhouettes that seem to sway like figures silently singing a hymn only they can hear. Some say these apparitions hover near the old organ pipes, their outlines trembling like smoke, vanishing the moment someone tries to approach. One custodian, who worked nighttime shifts for years, claimed he always felt uneasy passing through the nave. He described hearing soft footsteps above him, slow and deliberate, moving around the choir loft. Slow and deliberate, moving around the choir loft. Even when he knew he was alone. When he blinked, it was gone. Yet the echo of those footsteps continued for several seconds before fading into silence. The church's pipe organ is another source of mystery. It is an old instrument, meticulously maintained, with no automatic functions. Yet many have reported hearing it play by itself long after the musicians have gone home. Sometimes it is just a single note, drawn out and trembling like a breath across the keys. Other times, full chords ring through the nave, deep and resonant, as though someone unseen is testing the instrument. More chilling still are the moments when the music forms recognizable patterns of melancholic hymns from generations long past, melodies that once accompanied funerals, weddings, and wartime prayers. One evening, a choir member returned to the church to retrieve a forgotten songbook. As she stepped inside, a soft, familiar hymn drifted through the darkness. She paused, recognizing the tune as a piece the choir had not practiced in decades. The organ's notes were slow, deliberate, and oddly hollow, like they were being played from the far end of a tunnel. When she climbed to the loft, the bench was empty, and the keys continued moving on their own. She backed away slowly, watching as the music stopped abruptly, leaving behind a silence so complete it felt oppressive. Then there is the bella, a massive bronze instrument mounted high in the steeple. It is secured by thick metal braces, controlled only by the rope in the entryway and an old mechanical system that has long since been disconnected. And yet, the bell sometimes tolls loudly in the dead of night. Residents living nearby have heard rhythmic patterns, as if someone were ringing out a coded message. The sound rolls across the town, startling dogs awake and drawing curious onlookers into the streets. When checked, the bella's mechanisms always show no signs of movement, and the rope hangs untouched. One stormless summer night, a group of parishioners heard the bell tolling repeatedly. The pattern seemed intentional: 3 slow strikes, a pause, then 2 rapid chimes. When they went inside to investigate, the church was empty. But as they walked the aisle, the lights flickered faintly, and a cool draft swept past them. The air carried a faint scent of old incense, though none had been burned that day. Moments later, soft footsteps echoed from the choir loft above, though no one was there. Local historians believe the activity may be connected to Grace Episcopal Church's long and layered history. The church has weathered wars, epidemics, fires, and floods. Many say its spirits belong to former parishioners who found refuge there during periods of turmoil. Others believe the strange phenomena are echoes of old memories imprinted in the structure's residual energy, replaying itself like a forgotten recording. The graveyard surrounding the church adds another dimension to its haunting. Visitors walking the grounds at sunrise have seen faint figures drifting between the headstones, fading with the morning light. Some believe these spirits never left the place they once held sacred. Others think they returned simply to Listina, to the bells, to the organ, to the silent prayers still carried on the wind. As the years pass, the legends continue to grow. The church stands unchanged, watching over Natchez with its spectral choir and mysterious melodies that rise from the shadows. Grace Episcopal Church remains a place where the veil between past and present feels impossibly thin, and where every echo seems to carry the memory of someone who never truly left. St. Jonah's Methodist Church in Greenwood stands quietly at the edge of town, its red brick walls weathered by age, and its white steeple rising above the surrounding oak trees like a solemn sentinel. Few who pass by realize that beneath the church lies something far older than its 19th-century foundations, an abandoned burial ground, once forgotten, now forever intertwined with the life of the building above it. Those who visit the church after dark often sense this uneasy history the moment they step inside. The air grows colder, the silence thickens, and the shadows linger just a bit too long in the corners. Locals have long said the spirits buried beneath St. Jonah's never left. Their presence can be felt in small, unsettling waves of shivers that crawl across the skin without warning, a lingering scent of damp earth inside the sanctuary, and whispers that seem to float just below the edge of hearing. The church's bell tower, tall and proud during daylight hours, becomes a source of dread at night. The bell tolls without cause, its heavy, echoing strikes rolling across the darkened streets like a distant warning. The pattern is always irregular, as though someone unfamiliar with the mechanism is tugging at the rope from above. Many residents recall nights when the bell rang at impossible horse 3 in the morning, or just before dawn, when the world is at its quietest. The sound is never gentle. It crashes sharply, as if a desperate hand is gripping the rope, pulling with frantic energy. On more than one occasion, those brave enough to investigate found the bell rope swaying violently, though no wind touched it. The tower stairs, when climbed, reveal no intruders. Only the cold air and the lingering sensation of being watched. Inside the sanctuary, the pews hold their own chilling mysteries. Visitors have reported feeling hands cold, light, and unmistakably humana resting on their shoulders or brushing against their fingers as they walk between the rows. These ghostly touches are never accompanied by footsteps or voices. They appear suddenly, like a warning or an attempt to reach out from another world. One church volunteer, who often closed the building late at night, once felt a small hand wrap around his wrist. He froze, expecting to find someone beside him, but the pews were empty. The grip tightened for a moment, icy, almost painful before disappearing altogether. When he looked down, his skin had turned pale and numb, as if frost had touched it, despite the warm summer air outside. Another visitor, a historian researching the burial grounds beneath the church, described a far more unsettling encounter. The historian's description was ominous and foreboding. As she sat reading near the front pews, she noticed a faint movement out of the corner of her eye. A hand, gray, thin, and semi-transparent, rested gently on the polished wood beside her. It did not move, but the fingers curled slightly, as if they were holding onto the edge of a memory. When she blinked, the hand vanished, leaving behind a chilling cold that clung to the wood long after. The spirits are most active during foggy nights, when mist drifts between the gravestones outside and creeps through the cracks beneath the old wooden doors. The fog seems to carry faint forms within Ida shadows that resemble figures wandering through the graveyard. Some have been seen lingering near the windows, their blurred outlines peering inside as though searching for something they once knew. One memorable night, a group of teenagers dared each other to enter the church after hearing the bell toll repeatedly with no wind present. Inside, they found the sanctuary dim and silent. As they ventured down the aisle, the fog outside pressed against the stained glass windows, creating eerie shifting patterns across the floor. Then one of them noticed a series of handprints appearing on the pews, perfectly shaped, pale, and glistening like frost, moving slowly down the row as though an invisible figure were gliding forward on its knees, brushing each seat along the way. Panic set in. When the bell started ringing again, this time far louder than before, it echoed through the sanctuary with such force that dust fell from the rafters. The teenagers fled, but each reported the same sensation as they ran through the doorway, cold fingers brushing the backs of their legs, as if trying to hold them back. Church elders believe the spirits beneath St. Jonah's are restless because their graves were disturbed when the church was built. Records show that only some remains were moved before construction began, leaving many still buried where the church now stands. Yet despite the eerie activity, St. John's remains a place of quiet reverence. Many who visit during the day find peace in its warm light and history. But when the sun dips below the horizon, a different presence takes over. The shadows deepen, the pews grow cold, and the bell waits in eerie silencia, ready to toll once more at the touch of an unseen hand. For those who walk past on a still night, St. John's Methodist Church stands as a silent reminder that the past is never truly buried, and some spirits, restless and longing, linger just beneath the surface, waiting to be heard. St. Patrick's Catholic Church in Columbus rises gracefully above the quiet neighborhood streets, its spire cutting through the sky like a solemn reminder of the city's past. Built in the late 1800s, the church has weathered generations of worship, hardship, celebration, and loss. Its stone walls carry the echoes of countless prayers, and when evening settles in, the boundary between those prayers and the unseen world seems to blur. Many believe St. Patrick's is alive with spirits who never left, their devotion lingering long after their final breaths. Visitors often speak about the faint hymns that drift through the empty sanctuary at night. These hymns are soft, fragile, and strangely distant, like they come from a choir rehearsing in some far-off room. Yet every door is locked, every hallway silent, and every pew unoccupied. Some describe the sound as warm and soothing at first, the kind of melody sung during quiet evening services. But the longer one listens, the more unsettling it becomes. The voices seem layered, too many for a small choir, their harmonies slightly out of sync, as if sung by spirits whose memories are fading. One man, who stopped in late one night to light a candle for a family member, heard the hymn so clearly that he thought the choir had returned for an unscheduled practice. He stepped deeper into the nave, expecting to see familiar faces. Instead, he found rows of dark, empty pews. The singing grew louder, filling the air around him with ghostly harmonies, then abruptly stopped the moment he reached the front steps of the altar. The silence that followed was deafening, as though the church itself was holding its breath. Shadow figures are another common sight at St. Patrick's. They appear kneeling in prayer, often near the front pews or the side chapels. These silhouettes resemble parishioners lost in deep devotion, their heads bowed, hands clasped, bodies still. But when someone approaches, the figures dissolve into nothingness, vanishing in mid-motion like smoke caught in a sudden breeze. Some witnesses describe watching them slowly lift their heads or shift their posture before fading away. A longtime parish volunteer once encountered one of these figures during a late-night cleanup. She had paused to gather him books when she noticed a man kneeling near the front pews, his outline faint in the dim light. Assuming he had come in to pray, she walked toward him to offer a greeting. Halfway down the aisle, the figure flickered like a dying candle flame, then disappeared entirely. The pew cushion where he had been kneeling remained indented, as though someone had pressed down on it moments before. Then there is the bell, a towering, heavy instrument mounted securely in the steeple. The church ensures the mechanism is routinely checked and locked, especially during storms when the winds can be fierce. And yet, the bell often rings at the strangest times. Sometimes it tolls softly at midnight, a slow, singular chime that echoes over the rooftops. Other times it unleashes a rapid sequence of rings, almost frantic, as though trying to call Summonia or something back inside. What makes these occurrences even stranger is that the bell often rings during storms when the mechanism should be impossible to move. Thunder may shake the windows, rain may flood the streets, but the Bella's voice rises above it all, clear and steady. After one particularly violent storm, the caretaker climbed into the steeple to inspect the equipment. He found the locking mechanism still secured tight, untouched by wind or rain. Yet several witnesses had heard the bell ringing throughout the night. There are stories that suggest the spirits haunting St. Patrick's are former parishioners who found comfort within its walls and could not bear to leave after death. Others believe that the church's long history of funerals, wakes, and wartime prayers has imprinted echoes of sorrow into the very air. The hymns could be the lingering voices of a choir long gone, forever repeating their songs of hope. The kneeling figures might be souls seeking forgiveness or offering prayers for loved ones they left behind. One particularly eerie incident occurred on a winter night when the streets were coated in ice. A passerby walking home heard the bell ringing in a frantic pattern, as if signaling an emergency. He hurried to the church doors, expecting to find someone trapped or seeking help. Instead, he found the interior dark and silent. As he stepped inside, a cold gust swept down the aisle, carrying with it the unmistakable sound of whispers. He could not decipher the words, only that they were urgent, almost pleading. When he turned to leave, he saw a shadow kneeling in the far corner, head bowed. But before he could take a step closer, it vanished completely, leaving behind only the echo of the bell still vibrating through the walls. Despite its haunting reputation, St. Patrick's remains a cherished place in the community. Daylight brings warmth and familiarity, with sunlight streaming through stained glass windows that paint the floors in vibrant colors. It is only when night descends that the church reveals its hidden idea, a world of ghostly hymns, restless figures, and bells that ring for no living soul. For those who visit after dark, St. Patrick's Catholic Church is a place where the supernatural and the sacred seem intertwined, where echoes of the past drift through the present, and where unseen parishioners continue their eternal vigil. First United Methodist Church in Tupelo stands proudly at the edge of downtown, its tall brick tower rising confidently against the Mississippi sky. For decades, it has been a place of worship, community, and refuge. But behind its comforting exterior lies a series of eerie tales that have unsettled locals for generations. The church's bell tower, with its winding staircase and heavy bronze bell, has become the center of a haunting legend that continues to unfold even today. The first reports of mysterious ringing began shortly after the church was built. Residents recalled hearing the bell toll at unusual hours long past midnight, or just before dawn at times when no one should have been in the tower. At first, the unexplained ringing was dismissed as wind, mechanical issues, or even mischievous pranksters. But as the years passed, the stories grew stranger. The bell would ring on calm, still nights when not even a leaf stirred. It tolled during thunderstorms when the tower doors were locked tight. It even rang when the mechanism had been manually disengaged for repairs. The sound of the bell is unlike anything else in town. It has a deep, resonant tone that seems to vibrate through the air, rattling windows and stirring emotions in anyone who hears it. Witnesses often describe feeling a sudden chill the moment the bell rings, a cold so sharp and immediate it feels like stepping into an icy room. This chill is always fleeting, but intense enough to freeze someone in place for a few seconds, leaving them breathless and uneasy. One of the church's custodians, who worked there for nearly 20 years, reported hearing the bell ring twice during one of his late-night cleaning shifts. He had been sweeping near the entrance when the sound echoed through the building. At first, he thought someone had climbed the tower without permission, so he rushed to the stairwell. The air inside was noticeably colder, each breath forming a faint mist even in the heat of summer. As he climbed the narrow stairs, he saw something move above him, a shadow gliding slowly upward. He called out, expecting a late-night visitor or perhaps a wandering youth. But the shadow did not respond. It didn't hurry. It simply climbed the stairs with unnerving calm. When he reached the landing just below the bell, the figure vanished entirely. The custodian found the bell still swaying slightly, as though someone had just pulled the rope. Yet no one else was in the tower. Other witnesses have reported similar encounters. Shadowy shapes are often seen climbing the bell tower stairs, either ascending or descending, sometimes passing directly through the beams of flashlights without affecting the light at all. These shapes appear solid at first glance, with the outline of a person moving slowly, as if burdened by some invisible weight. But as soon as someone approaches, they dissolve into the stairwell shadows, leaving behind only the sound of faint, echoing footsteps. One Sunday evening, a small group of youth volunteers stayed late after a community event. As they were packing up supplies, they heard the bell ring once deep, loud, and startling. One of the teens, curious and unafraid, convinced the others to follow him to the tower. They climbed the staircase together, each step creaking beneath them. Halfway up, the temperature dropped abruptly. Their breath turned visible, and the hair on their arms stood straight up. At the next landing, a dark shape appeared above them, motionless. It seemed to crouch for a moment, like someone resting or praying. When the group froze, the shadow slowly rose, its form stretching unnaturally tall. Before gliding up the final flight of stairs, the teens ran back down, too frightened to continue. They report that even outside, the air stayed cold for several minutes. After the bell's echo faded, there are many theories about the origins of the haunting. Some say that a former bell ringer, who died while climbing the stairs long ago, continues his eternal duty in spirit. Others believe the tower was built over old grounds linked to tragedies that left restless echoes behind. A few even claim the shadows are not single spirits, but a collection of lingering presences tied to the church's long history of funerals and wartime prayers. The pastor, while respectful of the church's spiritual past, acknowledges that strange things do occur. He once admitted that the bell tower has always felt especially at night. He has experienced the sudden chill himself, usually accompanied by the sense that someone else is present, even when the tower is empty. Despite the haunting activity, First United Methodist Church remains a beloved place in Tupelo. By daylight, it is warm, bright, and welcoming. But at night, the bell tower seems to awaken, carrying whispers from another time. The shadows return to their silent climb. The air grows cold without warning. And somewhere high above, the bell waits, ready to ring out once more for reasons no living person can explain. For those who hear its mysterious tolls echoing across the quiet streets of Tupelo, the sound is unforgettable, a reminder that not all spirits rest peacefully, and that some places hold echoes long after their stories have ended. St. Mary of the Pines Church in Gulfport stands amid towering pines, their needles whispering in the wind like old secrets. Built decades ago, the church has long served as a sanctuary for the local community, a place of worship and comfort in a region prone to sudden storms and hurricanes. But over the years, residents and visitors have come to speak in hushed tones about the unusual occurrences that shadow the building after dark. Many believe that St. Mary of the Pines is haunted by parishioners who never returned from the violent hurricanes that have swept the Gulf Coast, their spirits lingering within the sanctuary, and their presence manifesting in ways both subtle and chilling. One of the most enduring phenomena at St. Mary of the Pines is the bell. The massive bronze instrument in the tower is old, but meticulously maintained. It should only ring during scheduled services or by hand of the church staff. Yet locals report hearing its toll in the dead of night, often hours before any weather disturbance, when the air is calm and the sky is clear. The bell seems to anticipate storms, its deep, sonorous chimes echoing across the town as if warning the living of some unseen danger. On these nights, even the most skeptical residents feel an unshakable tension in the air, a sense that the church is trying to communicate something beyond ordinary understanding. Several longtime parishioners have shared experiences of hearing the bell toll unexpectedly, only to find the ropes still secured and no one in the tower. One elderly man recalled waking at precisely 2:17 a.m. to a series of heavy, deliberate tolls. Rushing to the window, he saw the church standing silent and unlit under a star-filled sky, the wind calm and the streets deserted. The sound reverberated through his chest, leaving a lingering chill that felt more like the presence of someone standing beside him than the ringing of bronze against air. Inside the church, shadowy figures are often reported near the altar. These shapes resemble parishioners frozen in prayer, yet they do not respond to any human interaction. Witnesses describe them as tall, dark silhouettes, sometimes flickering like candle flames caught in a draft. Occasionally, a figure will appear kneeling, then slowly rise or turn toward the congregation, only to vanish mid-motion when approached. There is a sense of quiet devotion in their presence, as though these spirits continue to perform the rituals and prayers they could not finish in life. A volunteer who stayed late one evening to prepare for the next Dia-S service recounted a chilling encounter. As she organized hymnals near the altar, she noticed a figure kneeling in the pew closest to the sanctuary. Assuming it was another volunteer arriving late, she called out, but there was no answer. The figure remained, its outline dark and indistinct against the dim light streaming through the stained glass windows. As she stepped closer, the shadow seemed to dissolve into thin air, leaving behind only a faint chill that lingered along the aisle. Others have reported feeling sudden drops in temperature during these encounters, as if the spirits of those lost in hurricanes carry with them the icy touch of the sea and wind. The air can become oppressively cold, even in the heat of Gulf Porta-esque summer nights, and visitors often describe a prickling sensation along their skin, a tangible reminder that they are not alone. Some parishioners believe that the spirits are drawn to the church by its role as a refuge during storms, returning again and again to the place that once offered safety from Naturia-esque fury. There are also accounts of hearing whispers and muffled footsteps, especially near the altar or choir loft. These sounds are rarely loud enough to be clearly understood, but are distinct enough to make those inside pause. Some say it is the echo of prayers from the past. Others believe it is the spirits attempting to communicate warnings or simply seeking to relive moments of worship lost to tragedy. Occasionally, the distant sound of rustling fabric accompanies these ghostly movements, as though long-forgotten robes or garments from storm days are brushing against pews or kneelers. Despite the unsettling occurrences, the church remains a place of reverence and community. Morning services bring warmth and life, with sunlight pouring through the stained-glass windows and parishioners filling the pews with song and prayer. Yet when darkness falls, and the Gulf Coast winds Rizia even slightly, the air around St. Mary of the Pines grows heavy, and the legends of ghostly parishioners and premonitory bell tolls awaken. One particularly memorable evening, a small group of parishioners staying late preparing for a hurricane relief meeting heard the bell tolling in an eerie rhythm. Stepping outside, they saw the sky clear and calm, the air unnervingly still. As they returned inside, several claimed to have glimpsed shadowy figures kneeling near the altar, bowed heads glinting faintly in the dim candlelight. The room grew colder, and they felt an almost magnetic pull toward the figures, as if urging them to witness the unseen congregation of the lost. Some speculate that these spirits are those parishioners who perished in storms, tethered to the church by their devotion and by the memories of a community they loved. Others believe the church itself acts as a kind of vessel, retaining echoes of every hurricane, every prayer, every life intertwined with its walls. Whatever the reason, the effect is undeniable. St. Mary of the Pines is more than just a building. It is a sanctuary for the living, a memorial for the lost, and a haunting reminder that the past lingers quietly, waiting for those who walk its aisles after dark. For those who hear the bell ring unexpectedly or glimpse a shadow near the altar, the church stands as a solemn bridge between worlds. The church stands as a solemn bridge between worlds. Mary of the Pines carries the devotion of the living, the sorrow of the departed. The sorrow of the departed and the eerie certainty that sometimes the voices of those lost in tragedy never truly leave home. Ebenezer Baptist Church in Jackson stands as a testament to faith, resilience, and history. Its brick FAA section aude and tall arched windows speak of a congregation that has weathered decades of social change, civil rights struggles, and the quiet passage of time. The church has always been more than just a place of worship. It has served as a meeting ground for the community, a sanctuary during turbulent times, and a space where generations have found comfort and guidance. But alongside its rich history, Ebenezer Baptist has also become known for something far more mysterious. Those who visit after dark speak of shadowy figures, inexplicable sounds, and a presence that seems to linger long after the pews have emptied. Many of the unusual experiences center around the balcony. Visitors and members alike have reported glimpsing dark shapes moving along the upper levels of the church, particularly during evening hours when the sanctuary is empty. These figures are rarely well defined, more like silhouettes cast against the dim light filtering through stained glass windows. Some appear to be seated, others stand as if leaning over the railing, watching the rows below. The figures do not respond when approached, and often vanish the moment someone attempts to get closer. Witnesses describe an almost magnetic pull toward the balcony, a sense that something unseen is observing and silently holding court over the sanctuary. It is not only visual phenomena that make the church unsettling. Unexplained echoes of sermons are reported frequently, particularly on nights when no one is inside. The sound is faint at first, a murmur of voices, but it gradually grows into the cadence of preaching, complete with the rising and falling rhythms of sermon delivery. Parishioners describe hearing phrases from familiar passages, sermons that were preached decades ago, and occasionally even the unmistakable voice of pastors long past. One longtime member recounted sitting in her car outside the church late one evening, listening to what sounded like a revival service. The sound carried clearly from the open doors, even though she knew the sanctuary was empty. The voices ebbed and flowed, rising to crescendos of emotion before falling silent again, leaving only the still night. The bell tower adds another layer to Ebenezer Baptista's eerie reputation. The bell, a heavy bronze instrument mounted high above the sanctuary, has been known to ring at unexpected intervals. On quiet nights, residents living nearby have heard sporadic tolls that seem too deliberate to be caused by the wind or mechanical failure. The bell's sounds are sometimes rhythmic, almost like Morse code, while at other times they come as sudden, isolated strikes that startle anyone within earshot. Those familiar with the building say that when the bell tolls in the dead of night, it is often a sign of an unseen presence, a visitation from a spirit tied to the church's history. One evening, a caretaker staying late heard the bell strike repeatedly despite the mechanism being securely locked. As he stepped into the sanctuary, he felt a sudden chill sweep across the room, even though the air conditioning had been off for hours. Turning toward the balcony, he thought he saw a shadow moving across the upper railing, a figure bending slightly, as if in prayer or contemplation. He called out softly, expecting no reply, and the shadow seemed to pause, as though acknowledging his presence. Moments later, it disappeared, and the room fell silent once more. The bell remained still, but the residual cold lingered, a silent reminder that the encounter was far from ordinary. Other visitors have reported feeling an inexplicable weight while sitting in the pews, a pressure on their shoulders or the sense of being observed, even when no one is present. Footsteps echo through the sanctuary during empty hours, slow and deliberate, yet upon inspection, the floors are bare. Some have even described fleeting images in the corners of their vision, a raised hand, the tilt of a head, or a sway as though someone is moving in time with an unheard hymn. These moments are often accompanied by a subtle, almost imperceptible humming, like the tail end of a congregation's collective prayer. Historians and members alike believe that these phenomena are tied to Ebenezer Baptista's deep roots in the African American community and the history it has witnessed. The church served as a refuge during times of social upheaval, a meeting place for activists, and a home for countless families who found guidance and hope within its walls. It is said that the spirits are former parishioners, returning to witness the church as it continues to thrive, to maintain the rhythms of worship they once attended, and to remind the living of the legacy they left behind. Even as the supernatural occurrences continue, Ebenezer Baptist remains a vital part of Jackson. During the day, it is filled with light, laughter, and the sounds of fellowship. But as darkness falls, the shadows rise, the echoes of past sermons drift through the air, and the bell tolls to mark the presence of those who never left. For those who step inside after hours, the church is both sanctuary and threshold, a place where history and the supernatural intersect, and where the faithful and the unseen coexist in quiet, enduring harmony. Ebenezer Baptist Church, with its shadowy balcony figures, ghostly sermons, and mysterious bell tolls, reminds all who visit that some places carry the weight of memory so strongly that the past never truly departs. It is a living monument not only to faith, but to the spirits that linger, watching, listening, and preserving the echoes of generations that came before. Trinity Episcopal Church in Natchez sits quietly among the aged oaks and moss-covered streets of the historic district, its stone FAA section ade weathered by time but dignified, standing as a testament to generations of worshippers. Built in the 1800s, The church was constructed atop land that once served as a cemetery, a fact that has long fueled stories of hauntings and restless spirits. While the daytime brings soft sunlight through stained glass windows and the sound of footsteps of parishioners, nightfall reveals a different, more unsettling aspect of Trinity Episcopal. Visitors after dark often speak of cold drafts, ghostly figures, and a bell that seems to toll for no reason at all. The most frequently reported phenomenon occurs near the nave, where shadowy figures have been seen kneeling in prayer. Witnesses describe them as semi-transparent shapes, occasionally taking on the faint appearance of the parishioners who attended the church decades ago. These figures sit quietly, their heads bowed, hands folded, and eyes fixed on the altar. Those who attempt to approach often find the figures dissolving into the air before they can reach them, leaving only a lingering chill and the faint scent of old incense. One visitor, attending a late-night candlelight vigil, paused mid-aisle when she noticed a dark silhouette in the front pews. As she stepped closer, the figure faded, leaving her shaken but certain that Summonia or Somthinga had been kneeling there moments before. The bell tower of Trinity Episcopal is another focal point of its haunting. Unlike ordinary church bells that ring only during services, the bell here has been reported to toll spontaneously, sometimes in rhythmic patterns that seem deliberate yet unconnected to any liturgical schedule. Locals tell stories of hearing the bell in the middle of the night, the sound echoing across empty streets. It rises and falls in sequences that are sometimes rapid, sometimes slow and solemn, as though announcing a message only understood by those who watch silently from the shadows. On some nights, the tolling has been so persistent that it wakes nearby residents, who often check the steeple only to find the ropes secure and the mechanism untouched. A longtime caretaker recounted an unsettling evening when the bell tolled 5 times in a precise rhythm, despite the fact that he had checked the tower and secured the rope himself. As he walked through the nave, he felt a sudden, icy draft sweep past him, chilling his skin despite the summer heat outside. The temperature seemed to follow him, intensifying whenever he approached the altar, and diminishing only when he retreated toward the doors. Looking up at the balcony and the pews, he thought he glimpsed movementa, a shadow rising slowly, kneeling, and then fading as if it had never been there at all. The cold drafts themselves are another hallmark of Trinity Episcopal's haunted reputation. Visitors often report feeling sudden chills as they move through the nave or approach certain pews. The air can turn icy without warning, brushing across skin like fingers or whispering through the robes of worshippers. Sometimes the drafts appear to follow individuals, moving along the aisles in tandem with their steps, circling them near the altar or disappearing just as suddenly. Many who have experienced these gusts believe they are the spirits of those once buried beneath the church, restless but tied to the sacred space above. Another phenomenon described by those who enter at night is the sensation of being watched. While no figures may be immediately visible, the combination of cold air, distant bell tolls, and faint echoes of movement creates a palpable tension. Footsteps seem to follow across the wooden floors, faint and deliberate, but often vanish when confronted. A few visitors have even claimed to hear muffled whispers too faint to decipher, yet distinct enough to give the impression of prayer or warning. Some parishioners and historians suggest that the spirits haunting Trinity Episcopal are former worshippers who never left. Built on cemetery grounds, the church may be a vessel for memories and devotion, preserving echoes of those buried below. Others believe the rhythmic bell tolls are attempts at communication, perhaps marking significant moments or calling attention to events long forgotten. Whatever the cause, the effect is undeniable. Trinity Episcopal is a place where the boundary between past and present feels impossibly thin. Despite the haunting phenomena, the church remains a vital center for the Natchez community. Daytime brings warmth, sunlight streaming through colorful stained glass, choir rehearsals, and the soft murmur of parishioners speaking in familiar tones. Yet as darkness falls, the air becomes heavy, the shadows deepen, and the bell waits to toll again, as though signaling the presence of those who have long been absent from the living world. For those who step into the sanctuary after hours, Trinity Episcopal Church is more than just a building. It is a crossroads of history and the supernatural, where shadowy figures kneel in eternal devotion. Cold drafts trace the paths of the living, and the bell tolls with a voice that seems both warning and welcome. Every flicker of shadow, every chill that brushes the skin, and every unexplained echo reminds visitors that the past never truly leaves, and that some spirits, tied by faith and memory, continue to watch, pray, and linger in sacred spaces long after their earthly lives have ended. St. Paula's Catholic Church in Vicksburg stands as a stoic monument to centuries of faith, its towering spire and weathered stone walls echoing the history of a city shaped by war, flood, and devotion. By day, the church is a place of quiet reverence, sunlight streaming through its stained glass windows and illuminating the wooden pews that have hosted generations of worshippers. But as night falls, the familiar warmth gives way to an atmosphere thick with mystery, where sounds, shadows, and sensations suggest that St. Paula's is far more than a simple building. Many who have entered its doors after dark report experiences that defy explanation, hinting at the lingering presence of parishioners from centuries past. One of the most striking phenomena is the phantom organ music that rises unexpectedly late at night. St. Paul's organ, a massive instrument of polished wood and gleaming pipes, sits silently for hours after services have ended, its keys untouched. Yet visitors frequently report hearing its notes filling the nave with haunting melodies. The music is often slow and deliberate, sometimes resembling hymns that were last played decades or even centuries ago. Some witnesses describe the sound as ethereal, almost fragile, as if the music itself is an echo of memories rather than a living performance. Others find it chilling, noting that the harmonies can carry a sense of longing or sorrow that seems almost human. One parishioner recounted an experience while staying late to prepare for a morning mass. As she arranged hymnals near the altar, the first note struck a deep, resonant tone that seemed to come from the organ loft above. She climbed the narrow stairs to investigate, expecting perhaps a mechanical malfunction. The organ, however, sat untouched. Yet the music continued, each note deliberate, flowing into a hymn she recognized from old records of past services. The melody ceased the instant she reached the top, leaving the room silent but heavy with an unexplainable presence. The bell of St. Paula's adds another layer to its supernatural reputation. Mounted high in the tower, the bell is a substantial bronze instrument, its rope normally requiring a deliberate hand to set it in motion. Yet on multiple occasions, the bell has been heard tolling without wind, without human contact, and often during the stillest hours of the night. Residents in the surrounding neighborhood have reported waking to its deep, resonant chimes when no storm or disturbance was near. The tolling is sometimes slow and solemn, almost mournful, while at other times it strikes in sharp, rhythmic sequences that suggest a purposeful communication from an unseen force. Those who hear it often feel a chill accompany the sound, a sudden drop in temperature that seems to follow them long after the echoes fade. Perhaps the most unsettling experiences occur within the pews themselves. Shadowy figures have been observed walking silently along the rows, their forms barely distinguishable in the dim light filtering through the church's windows. Witnesses describe these figures as tall and thin, moving with a slow, deliberate grace, as though performing a ritual long forgotten by the living. Some figures kneel at the altar, others pause mid-aisle, their presence unmistakable yet intangible. Attempts to approach or touch them are futile. The shadows vanish in an instant, leaving only the echo of footsteps or the faint sense of someone lingering nearby. A local historian who frequents the church late at night described seeing a series of figures moving through the nave during one particularly quiet evening. They appeared to him as parishioners from another era, dressed in long coats and simple gowns, their heads bowed in prayer. The movement was silent, deliberate, and unhurried. When he stepped closer to get a better look, the figures dissipated as though they were nothing more than vapor, leaving him with an eerie awareness of the centuries of faith that have passed through St. Paula's doors. Some attribute these occurrences to the church's long and layered history. St. Paula's has endured wars, epidemics, and floods, serving as a sanctuary for those seeking comfort in times of crisis. Many believe that the spirits are parishioners who remained bound to the place of their devotion, their memories and prayers imprinted on the very walls and wooden pews. The organ music and bell tolls could be their way of expressing presence, reaching out across the centuries to ensure that their existence is acknowledged and remembered. Even as these ghostly phenomena continue, St. Paula's Catholic Church remains a cornerstone of the Vicksburg community. Daylight hours bring warmth, fellowship, and the familiar rhythms of Mass, choir rehearsals, and quiet contemplation. But as darkness falls, the church transforms. The phantom music begins to rise from the loft. The bell tolls with no hand to ring it, and shadows glide silently through the pews, carrying the echo of prayers long past. For those who enter after hours, St. Paula's is more than a historic building. It is a bridge between centuries, where the living and the departed coexist in quiet observation. The music, the tolling, and the shadows remind visitors that the church's story is not only etched in stone and wood, but also held in the lingering presence of those who have walked its aisles before. In the stillness of the night, St. Paula's Catholic Church becomes a place where history, devotion, and the supernatural converge, preserving the echoes of faith across generations. Bethel Baptist Church in Hattiesburg is a modest brick building that has stood for over a century, its white steeple visible from the surrounding streets, and its doors a constant invitation to the faithful. By day, the church exudes warmth and community, with sunlight streaming through its stained glass windows and the soft murmur of parishioners preparing for services. Yet as evening approaches, the atmosphere shifts. Visitors who linger after dusk often report experiences that are difficult to explain: shadowy figures, ghostly sounds, and a sense of being watched by unseen presences. Among the most unsettling phenomena are the apparitions of children, the spontaneous ringing of the church bell, and the oppressive weight that seems to hang in the air once the pews have emptied. The shadowy children are frequently the first to be noticed. They appear quietly at dusk, seated in the pews or wandering the aisles, their forms vague and indistinct in the fading light. Witnesses describe them as small silhouettes, often appearing to mimic the gestures of children attending Sunday services and kneeling, bowing their heads, or clasping their hands in prayer. Unlike living children, they move with an eerie stillness, almost as if frozen between motions. Those who attempt to approach or speak to them often find that the figures vanish the moment they are near, leaving the pews empty and the air heavy with a sudden chill. Some parishioners believe these spirits may be the souls of children lost long ago, perhaps during illnesses or accidents, drawn to the church by its role as a place of sanctuary and worship. The bell of Bethel Baptist Church has also become a focal point of its haunting. It is a large, old bronze bell housed in a tower above the sanctuary, normally reserved for Sunday services and special occasions. Yet on countless occasions, visitors and residents alike have heard the bell ring when the building is empty, sometimes late at night, sometimes in the quiet hours just before dawn. Its tolling can be sudden and sharp, echoing across the neighborhood, or slow and mournful, resonating deep within the wooden structure of the church. Attempts to locate the source often reveal the bell untouched, the rope still secured, and the mechanism locked. Some claim that the bell's tolling coincides with the presence of the shadowy children, as if signaling their arrival or marking the unseen congregation. Many who have spent time in the church during these hours report a heavy, almost tangible presence in the building. It is not merely a feeling of emptiness or silence. It is a sensation that something or something is observing, watching every movement with intent. Parishioners describe a weight on the shoulders, a pressure in the chest, or a chill that moves through the body, settling in the limbs. A longtime member of the congregation once recounted staying late to prepare for a church event. As she arranged hymnals near the front pews, she felt a sudden coldness that seemed to seep into her bones. Looking up, she glimpsed a small shadow moving along the aisle, pausing in the center to kneel. When she called out, the figure disappeared instantly, but the oppressive presence remained, as if the watcher had not left entirely. Others have reported hearing faint laughter or whispers in the hallways, sounds that resemble children at play, yet carry no joy, only an eerie, haunting quality. These noises often accompany the bell's spontaneous ringing or the sudden appearance of shadowy figures. Some parishioners speculate that the church itself may retain echoes of the past, memories of families, children, and congregants who once filled its pews. The combination of visual apparitions, unexplained sounds, and chilling sensations creates an experience that feels alive with spirits rather than mere superstition. One evening, a small group of volunteers stayed late after a community meeting. As they were tidying the sanctuary, the bell rang unexpectedly, a series of clear, deliberate tolls that cut through the quiet night. At the same time, several noticed small figures appearing in the pews, children kneeling in prayer or standing silently at the ends of the aisles. The volunteers froze, unsure whether to approach or retreat. The shadows did not move toward them. But the air seemed heavier, the room filled with a silent, watchful tension. Moments later, both the figures and the sound of the bell ceased, leaving only the echo of footsteps and a lingering sense of presence. Some suggest that the spirits haunting Bethel Baptist Church are the souls of those who died young, tied to the church by a longing for the safety and comfort it once provided. Others believe that the bell itself may serve as a marker, announcing the arrival of the unseen congregation and reinforcing their connection to the living world. Whatever the explanation, the effects on visitors are undeniably an experience that lingers long after leaving the sanctuary. Despite its haunting reputation, Bethel Baptist remains an active and cherished part of Hattiesburg. Daytime services bring warmth, laughter, and song, while parishioners move freely through the pews without incident. But when dusk falls, the church transforms into a space where the veil between the living and the dead feels thin. Shadowy children appear, the bell tolls for no one, and the heavy presence of past congregants makes itself known. For those who enter after hours, Bethel Baptist Church becomes a place where history, devotion, and the supernatural converge, a sanctuary both for the living and for the spirits who continue to watch, pray, and linger in its timeless halls. St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Jackson stands as a solemn monument to faith and history, its tall steeple piercing the evening sky and its stone FAA section worn by decades of wind and rain. By day, sunlight filters through the stained glass windows, illuminating the pews and the polished wood of the altar, creating an atmosphere of calm and reverence. Yet as night descends, the church takes on a more mysterious and unsettling character. Visitors who linger after dark often report phenomena that defy explanation: ghostly silhouettes on the balcony, the bell tolling without warning, and whispers and footsteps echoing through the empty nave. One of the most commonly reported experiences occurs in the balcony. Visitors frequently describe seeing dark, indistinct figures moving among the pews above, their shapes barely more than shadows against the dim light of the church. These silhouettes often appear to be observing the sanctuary below, some seated and others standing, as if preparing to descend the steps. Many who attempt to approach the balcony or call out find that the figures vanish instantly, leaving no trace other than the lingering sensation of being watched. Some witnesses report feeling a chill as they move beneath the balcony, as if the shadowy gaze reaches down to brush against them, a presence that is tangible yet impossible to grasp. The bell tower of St. Lucia is another focal point of its haunting. The large bronze bell, normally reserved for services or special occasions, has been known to ring on its own, often at the stroke of midnight. Residents in the surrounding neighborhood have reported hearing its deep tolling echo across the streets during the quietest hours of the night. In some instances, the bell rings in rhythmic sequences that suggest intention, as though communicating with those who hear it. Attempts to locate the cause often reveal the rope and mechanism secure and untouched, making the sound all the more mysterious. Those who have heard the bell often describe an immediate drop in temperature, a cold that seeps into the bones and lingers long after the echoes have faded. Accompanying the bell are whispers and footsteps that move unnaturally throughout the church. Visitors report hearing soft murmurs that resemble prayer or conversation. But when they attempt to trace the sound, it seems to come from multiple directions at once, echoing in ways that defy the architecture of the building. Footsteps are similarly strangely slow, deliberate, and echoing across the wooden floors, yet they stop whenever anyone approaches the area from which they seem to originate. One late-night visitor recounted sitting in a pew when she suddenly heard a series of footsteps climbing the stairs to the balcony. Moments later, faint whispers accompanied the sound, as though unseen parishioners were discussing matters among themselves. When she stood to investigate, the sounds abruptly ceased, leaving only silence and the lingering sense that something or something had been present. Shadowy figures are not limited to the balcony. Some have been seen moving along the main aisles, appearing to kneel at the altar or glide between pews without disturbing a single object. These apparitions are often described as faint silhouettes, their edges blurred and indistinct. They do not respond to attempts at interaction, and their presence is accompanied by a palpable chill and the feeling that they are observing the living from another plane. A parishioner who stayed late one evening to prepare for a morning service felt the sensation of unseen eyes following her as she moved through the nave. When she glanced toward the balcony, she thought she saw two dark shapes standing silently, their forms fading as she focused on them directly. Some speculate that the spirits at St. Lucia's Episcopal Church are former parishioners who maintained a devotion so deep that they lingered long after death. The Bella's midnight tolling could be interpreted as a signal of their presence, an attempt to connect with the living and continue their worship. The whispers and footsteps may be remnants of prayers or conversations from long ago, repeating in cycles that mirror the congregation's past routines. The shadows on the balcony and in the aisles seem to be observers, guardians of the church's history, silently ensuring that the sacred space remains protected and remembered. Even with the haunting phenomena, St. Lucia's remains an active center of worship. Daytime brings warmth, song, and fellowship as parishioners fill the pews with life and devotion. Yet as darkness falls, the church transforms into a space where the veil between the living and the dead feels thin. The balcony shadows reappear. The bell tolls with no hand to ring it, and whispers and footsteps echo unnaturally through the empty nave. Those who experience these events describe them as both awe-inspiring and unsettling, a reminder of the church's deep history and the spirits tied to it. For anyone entering St. Lucia's remains an active center of worship. Luke's Episcopal Church after hours, the experience is unlike any other. It is a place where the past and present coexist, where the faithful and the unseen share the same sacred space. The ghostly silhouettes, the tolling bell, and the whispers in the shadows all serve as reminders that the building carries not only the prayers of the living, but also the lingering devotion of those who have passed. In the quiet of night, St. Lucia's stands as a testament to enduring faith, history, and the subtle, persistent presence of spirits who continue to watch, pray, and move through its hallowed halls. St. Augustine Catholic Church in Natchez stands quietly amid the historic streets, its towering steeple and brick walls a testament to centuries of faith and endurance. Established near the grounds of old plantations, the church has long served the local community as a place of worship, sanctuary, and reflection. Yet beneath its dignified exterior lies a history intertwined with hardship, devotion, and the echoes of lives long past. Over the years, visitors and parishioners alike have reported eerie phenomena, shadowy figures, ghostly presences, and the tolling of bells on nights so calm that no wind disturbs the air. Many believe that the spirits are those of former parishioners and the enslaved individuals who once labored on the plantations surrounding the church, their souls lingering near the sacred grounds where they sought solace or were bound by circumstance. Perhaps the most commonly reported phenomenon occurs in and around the nave. Shadowy figures are often seen moving between pews or kneeling near the altar, their forms indistinct and shimmering in the low light of dusk or moonlight. Witnesses describe the figures as semi-transparent silhouettes, some appearing to be adults in long robes. Others smaller and childlike, suggesting the presence of multiple generations. These shadows move slowly, sometimes standing at the edge of the pews as if observing the congregation, at other times kneeling in silent prayer. Attempts to approach or interact with them often result in the figures fading into the air, leaving only a lingering chill or a sudden sense of being watched. One longtime parishioner recounted arriving early one evening to set up for Mass, only to notice a dark figure kneeling near the front pews. As she stepped closer, the figure vanished, leaving the space empty, yet imbued with a heavy presence. The grounds surrounding St. Augustine are also central to its haunted reputation. On calm nights when the moon is high, visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures kneeling outside, under the silver light, as though continuing their devotions beyond the church walls. These apparitions are often described as standing or bowing silently, unmoving except for the faint sway of shadows in the breeze. Some witnesses believe these are the spirits of enslaved parishioners who once worshipped nearby, returning to honor their faith in a space that offered them rare moments of spiritual reprieve. Others suggest the figures are ancestors of the congregation, drawn back to the church by devotion or by the weight of history. Whatever their origin, the sight of these kneeling shapes under the moonlight evokes a mixture of reverence and unease, a reminder of lives intertwined with both faith and hardship. The bell of St. Augustine Catholic Church has also become an object of fascination and fear. The large bronze bell, mounted high in the tower, is meant to ring during services and special occasions. Yet residents frequently report hearing it toll on nights of absolute stillness, with no wind to sway the ropes and no one in the tower to pull them. The tolling is deep and sonorous, sometimes slow and solemn, other times quick and deliberate, carrying an almost musical rhythm that resonates across the surrounding streets. Those who hear it often describe an immediate drop in temperature, a chill that moves through the air and settles in the bones. Some parishioners believe that the bell tolls to signal the presence of spirits, marking their return to the grounds or commemorating moments of remembrance long forgotten. Inside the church, additional phenomena enhance its spectral reputation. Faint whispers can sometimes be heard along the aisles, soft and indistinct, as if carrying fragments of prayers from the past. Footsteps echo across the wooden floors, slow and deliberate, yet when investigated, they seem to originate from no one present. On rare occasions, the organ has been reported playing softly on its own, filling the nave with gentle, mournful melodies that evoke both awe and unease. Visitors describe the combination of shadows, sound, and chill as overwhelming, a tangible reminder that St. Augustine is a place where history and the supernatural converge. Historians and parishioners alike believe that the spirits haunting St. Augustine are tied to the church's location and legacy. Being built near plantations, the church was a space where enslaved people, laborers, and parishioners from decades past gathered to worship, often in moments of quiet resistance or solace. The shadowy figures in the pews, kneeling under the moonlight, and the tolling bell are seen as manifestations of this deep connection to the sacred space, echoes of devotion that cannot be silenced by time or mortality. Some suggest that the church itself preserves these presences, acting as a vessel for both memory and spirit, ensuring that the faith and struggles of those long gone continue to resonate. Despite these haunting experiences, St. Augustine Catholic Church remains a vital part of Natchez. Daytime brings warmth, music, and fellowship, with sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. But as darkness falls and the streets quiet, the church transforms. The shadowy figures appear in the pews, the bell tolls for no human hand. And ghostly presences kneel outside under the moonlight, a testament to devotion, memory, and lives intertwined with both the sacred and the spectral. For those who enter after dusk, St. Augustine is more than a churchuit. It is a bridge between past and present, a place where faith endures. In both the living and the departed, and where the echoes of history continue to watch, pray, and linger silently in the night. Mount Olive Baptist Church in Greenwood stands as a quiet sentinel over its surrounding neighborhood, its white-painted walls and tall steeple a familiar sight to locals. By day, it serves as a hub of community life, filled with the sounds of fellowship, choir rehearsals, and the laughter of children. Yet after night falls, the atmosphere around the church transforms, taking on an air of mystery and unease. For decades, visitors and parishioners have reported unusual occurrences. Ghostly sermons echoing through the empty sanctuary, the bell ringing without any human touch, and shadowy figures wandering among the gravestones in the cemetery that lies adjacent to the church. Those who remain in or near the church late at night often describe hearing the faint murmur of preaching, complete with the cadence, emotion, and rhythm of a congregation long gone. Sometimes the voice rises and falls in familiar patterns. Other times it drifts in fragmented sentences that seem almost like fragments of old prayers. One longtime resident told of sitting quietly in the sanctuary after hours, when he suddenly heard a sermon he recognized from years past, delivered by a minister who had served decades ago. The words echoed clearly in the empty nave, yet when he moved toward the pulpit, the sound vanished, leaving only the sensation that Summonia or Somthinga was present and observing. The church bell adds another layer to Mount Olivia's eerie reputation. Suspended high in the tower, the bronze bell was designed to mark services and significant events. However, on countless nights, locals have reported hearing it toll spontaneously, even on nights when the weather is calm and the building is empty. The sound can be slow and solemn or sharp and rhythmic, reverberating across the streets of Greenwood and stirring a sense of both awe and dread. Attempts to check the mechanism inside the tower often reveal the rope securely fastened, the clapper at rest, and no explanation for the chimes that fill the night. Parishioners believe that the bell tolls in response to the presence of spirits, calling attention to those who linger unseen among the living. Beyond the church itself lies the adjacent cemetery, where many of the area's earliest parishioners were laid to rest. Shadowy figures are often reported moving among the gravestones, their shapes dark and indistinct but undeniably human. Witnesses describe them walking slowly along the rows, pausing occasionally as though paying silent respects or engaging in private prayer. The figures are most often seen at dusk or during the quietest hours of night, gliding along the paths without disturbing a single stone. Those brave enough to approach often find the cemetery empty, yet the air remains thick with a sense of presence, a feeling that Summonia or many Summonisa continue to occupy the sacred ground. Some who have experienced these occurrences describe an almost oppressive sensation while inside the church or wandering the cemetery. The air feels heavy, the atmosphere charged with something unseen. A woman volunteering for an evening cleanup once recounted arranging hymnals near the pews, when she felt a cold breeze brush her shoulder. Glancing toward the cemetery through the open doors, she thought she saw dark shapes moving silently between gravestones. When she blinked, the figures had vanished. Yet the weight of their presence lingered, a quiet reminder that the past had not entirely departed from Mount Olive. The combination of ghostly sermons, spontaneous bell tolling, and apparitions in the cemetery has given Mount Olive Baptist Church a reputation that blends reverence and fear. Some parishioners believe that these manifestations are the spirits of former church members, lingering to continue their devotion and ensure that the church remains a place of worship and remembrance. Others suggest that the cemetery's proximity to the church allows for a crossing of boundaries, where the living and the dead briefly share the same sacred space. In either case, the experiences are not fleeting or imagined. Those who witness them consistently report the same chilling patterns, from echoing voices to wandering shadows to the tolling bell. Despite these supernatural occurrences, Mount Olive Baptist Church continues to serve its congregation faithfully. Daytime services bring warmth, music, and fellowship, while the sound of children playing and voices singing fills the building with life. Yet as darkness falls, the church and its cemetery transform. Shadowy figures appear among the gravestones. Ghostly sermons fill the empty sanctuary, and the bell tolls for no apparent reason. For those who venture into the church or walk the cemetery at night, Mount Olive becomes a bridge between past and present, a place where history and devotion leave echoes that refuse to fade. Visitors often describe leaving the grounds with a profound sense of connection, tempered by unease. The church, the bell, the gravestones, and the wandering shadows all serve as reminders that the lives and faith of those who came before continue to linger. Mount Olive Baptist Church is not just a building. It is a space where the echoes of devotion, memory, and spirit remain tangible. A place where the faithful and the unseen continue to share the same sacred halls and grounds, long after the lights have gone out. Christ Episcopal Church in Vicksburg stands as a testament to history and devotion, its stone FAA section Ade, weathered by decades of sun and rain, yet maintaining an air of quiet dignity. By day, the church is filled with the familiar rhythms of parish Lithia choirs practicing hymns, the murmur of conversation among parishioners, and sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, painting the wooden pews in hues of red, blue, and gold. Yet when evening descends, the sanctuary takes on a markedly different presence, one that has inspired both awe and fear. Visitors have long reported strange occurrences of bells ringing for hours with no one present, shadows gliding along the nave walls, and faint cries echoing during evening prayers, all of which contribute to the church's eerie reputation. Perhaps the most unsettling phenomenon is the bell of Christ Episcopal Church. Yet on many nights, locals and parishioners have reported hearing the bell toll repeatedly with no human intervention. The tolling often continues for hours, its deep, resonant sound echoing across the surrounding streets. Neighbors have described waking to its mournful peals in the middle of the night, only to find the church empty and the bell's rope secured. Some say the tolling follows a rhythm, deliberate and methodical, almost as if attempting to communicate a message or summon attention. Those who hear it often report an immediate drop in temperature, a heavy chill that seems to seep into the bones, leaving a lingering sense of unease. Inside the nave, shadowy figures add to the church's spectral reputation. Visitors frequently describe seeing dark silhouettes move along the walls, slipping silently from one aisle to the next. These shadows are most noticeable in the flickering candlelight of evening prayers, where the interplay of light and darkness seems to animate them further. Some witnesses report that the figures appear to mimic the postures of worshippers, kneeling, bowing, or crossing themselves, yet when approached, they vanish instantly, leaving only an empty pew or a darkened aisle. One parishioner recounted standing near the altar during a late-night vigil, when a shadow moved along the wall, pausing briefly to bow as though in prayer. When he stepped closer to see who it might be, nothing remained, though the chill in the room persisted, heavier than before. Even more disquieting are the faint cries that some visitors hear during evening prayers. The sounds are soft and almost indistinct, as if coming from far away, yet clearly human in nature. They are often described as mournful or pleading, reminiscent of voices trapped between past and present. Some parishioners suggest that these cries are echoes of former worshippers, souls bound to the church by faith or unresolved sorrow. Others believe the sounds are tied to the church's long history, a reflection of trials and hardships faced by the community over the decades. Regardless of the explanation, the cries add an additional layer of haunting to the sanctuary, blending with the tolling bell and shadowed walls to create an atmosphere charged with both reverence and unease. The church's layout seems to enhance the supernatural experiences. The tall, arched ceilings of the nave, the long aisles lined with polished pews, and the towering stained glass windows all contribute to an environment where sound carries strangely, footsteps echo unnaturally, and shadows appear to move independently of their sources. Visitors have described sensing a presence even when no figures are visible, a feeling of being observed by unseen eyes. The combination of audible phenomena, moving shadows, and chilling temperature changes creates an experience that is difficult to ignore, one that lingers long after leaving the sanctuary. Some historians and parishioners believe that Christ Episcopal Church's hauntings are tied to the depth of its history. The church has witnessed generations of worshippers, moments of celebration, and periods of sorrow, each leaving an imprint on the building itself. The bell may toll for spirits seeking attention, the shadows may represent lingering devotion, and the cries may echo the emotions of those who once filled the nave. Others suggest that the proximity of the church to historic sites and cemeteries in Vicksburg enhances the supernatural activity, connecting the living sanctuary with the memories of those who have passed. Despite the chilling phenomena, Christ Episcopal Church remains a cornerstone of the Vicksburg community. Daytime services bring light, music, and fellowship, the pews filled with parishioners engaging in prayer and song. Yet when darkness falls, the church transforms. The bell rings on its own, shadows glide silently along the walls, and faint cries ripple through the sanctuary. For those who enter after hours, Christ Episcopal Church is more than a building. It is a living testament to history, faith, and the unseen. It is a place where the present and past intersect, where the echoes of devotion and memory persist, and where the faithful and the spectral coexist in the quiet, candlelit nave. Visitors often leave with a mixture of reverence and unease, sensing that the church is both alive and haunted. The tolling bell, the moving shadows, and the faint cries serve as enduring reminders that history is never truly silent, and that some presences linger long after the last service has ended. Christ Episcopal Church is a space where the sacred meets the supernatural. St. Anthony Catholic Church in Biloxi rises near the Gulf Coast, its whitewashed walls and steeple a familiar landmark amid the salty breeze and coastal streets. By day, it is a place of warmth and devotion, sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, illuminating the wooden pews that have hosted generations of worshippers. But when night falls, the church transforms into a space where the past seems to linger, and the line between the living and the departed grows thin. Locals and visitors alike have reported strange and unsettling phenomena. The church bell tolling unexpectedly, shadowy figures appearing near the altar, and apparitions that seem to repeat movements from decades past. Many believe these spirits are sailors and parishioners lost to the sea. Their devotion so strong that it binds them to St. Anthony long after death. The Bell of St. Anthony is one of its most famous and chilling mysteries. Mounted high in the tower, the large bronze bell is meant to call worshippers to Mass and mark special occasions. Yet countless witnesses have reported hearing it toll at odd hours, sometimes during calm, windless nights. The sound of the bell resonates across the streets of Biloxi, deep and mournful, carrying a weight that seems to extend beyond the material world. Locals claim that the bell often rings without any human intervention, its rope secured and clapper resting still. On several occasions, the tolling is slow and deliberate, echoing in long intervals, as if announcing the presence of unseen visitors or commemorating those who perished at sea. Those who hear it often report a sudden drop in temperature, a chill that penetrates the bones and lingers long after the sound fades. Inside the church, shadowy figures are frequently observed near the altar. Witnesses describe these forms as indistinct silhouettes, sometimes small and hunched, other times tall and imposing, their edges blurred in the low light. During evening services or late-night visits, the figures are said to move slowly along the sanctuary, kneeling, crossing themselves, or pacing as if performing ritual actions. Many report that the figures repeat movements once carried out by worshippers decades earlier. Some parishioners have recognized patterns resembling long-forgotten processions, prayers, or ceremonial gestures, giving the impression that the church itself preserves echoes of past devotion. Those brave enough to approach often find the figures vanish before contact, leaving only a chill in the air and the sense that they are being observed by unseen eyes. The connection to the sea is deeply woven into the haunting of St. Anthony. Biloxia's history as a coastal town has seen countless sailors lost to storms and shipwrecks, many of whom were part of the parish. Witnesses claim that the apparitions often take the forms of men in naval attire, moving with deliberate motions that suggest a disciplined familiarity with ritual and duty. These spectral sailors are sometimes seen walking slowly through the nave or kneeling near the altar, as if attending Mass from beyond the grave. Parishioners believe that the spirits are drawn to the church because it was a place of solace and hope for those who ventured into the Gulf, a place where prayers were offered for safety and guidance. A place of solace and hope for those who ventured into the Gulf. A place where prayers were offered for safety and guidance. The persistence of these figures is thought to be a reflection of faith that transcends death. A need to return to the sanctuary that once provided comfort in life. Some witnesses have reported hearing faint murmurs or whispers accompanying the figures' movements. The sounds are soft, almost indistinct, and often resemble fragments of prayers, instructions, or hymns. Footsteps echo unnaturally along the wooden floors, sometimes in rhythm with the tolling bell. Visitors describe the atmosphere as both reverent and unsettling, a tangible presence that feels alive yet otherworldly. The combination of visual, auditory, and physical sensations creates an experience that is immersive and difficult to forget. Many leave with a deep respect for the spirits they have glimpsed, while others are haunted by the intensity of the encounter. The church's interior seems to amplify these experiences. The high arched ceilings, polished pews, and tall stained glass windows create an environment where sound carries, shadows stretch and shift, and movements are exaggerated in the low light. The altar, in particular, seems to act as a focal point for the apparitions. Many parishioners report that the figures remain near this sacred space, kneeling, standing, or performing gestures that mirror actions from decades past. A lingering memory or devotion, a spectral continuation of traditions long concluded in the living world. Despite its eerie reputation, St. Anthony Catholic Church remains an active center of worship and community life. Daytime brings warmth, music, and fellowship, while parishioners fill the pews with song and prayer. But as dusk falls and the streets grow quiet, the bell tolls unexpectedly. Shadows gather near the altar, and the ghostly figures repeat the devotion of those who came before. For visitors after dark, St. Anthony becomes a place where history, faith, and the supernatural intersect. It is a sanctuary not only for the living but for the departed, a space where memories, prayers, and spirits endure in the hushed, candlelit halls. Those who enter after hours often leave with a profound sense of connection, tinged with unease. The spectral sailors and parishioners are reminders that faith and devotion can transcend death, and that St. Anthony Catholic Church is a place where the past continues to move, pray, and watch, ensuring that the echoes of history are never truly silent. Shiloh Baptist Church in Tupelo stands as a historic landmark, its brick walls and tall steeple a familiar sight in the quiet streets of the town. By day, the church is a place of warmth and community, filled with the sounds of hymnals, chatter, and the gentle hum of parishioners moving through the sanctuary. Sunlight filters through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the polished pews, creating an atmosphere of serenity. Yet as night falls, Shiloh Baptist transforms into a place where the veil between the living and the unseen seems impossibly thin. Visitors who remain after hours often report a variety of unsettling phenomena: ghostly hands touching the pews, cold drafts that follow them through the empty halls, intermittent bell tolls, and shadowy figures kneeling in prayer. These occurrences have given Shiloh Baptist a reputation as one of Tupeloa's most haunted locations, drawing the curious, the devoted, and those fascinated by the unexplained. Perhaps the most disquieting experience reported by visitors is the sensation of ghostly hands on the pews. Several parishioners have recounted moments of sitting or moving along the sanctuary when they felt sudden, cold touches along the polished wood. The sensations are fleeting yet distinct, often described as fingers brushing the backs of pews or lightly gripping the sides as if in silent prayer. One visitor, arranging hymnals late at night, felt a cool hand slide across her shoulder and along the pew in front of her. When she looked up, the pews were empty, and the room was silent, yet the chill remained. These unexplained touches seem to occur most often when the church is completely empty, suggesting that unseen presences are moving through the sanctuary, interacting with the space in ways that are impossible to explain. Cold drafts are another commonly reported phenomenon. Even on warm summer evenings, visitors have reported sudden drops in temperature, accompanied by the feeling of air moving along hallways and aisles as though following them. These drafts often appear to have no source, passing through walls, doors, and closed windows without resistance. The effect can be startling, particularly in the quiet stillness of the empty church. Some witnesses claim that the cold seems to linger near the pews, the pulpit, and other sacred areas, as if spirits are maintaining a presence where they once prayed or worshipped. The drafts are often accompanied by the faint scent of old wood or candle wax, adding to the sensory impression that Shiloh Baptist is a space where past and present intersect. The bell tower of Shiloh Baptist has its own unsettling history. The large bronze bell, intended to mark services and significant events, has been reported to ring intermittently without cause. Residents in the surrounding area often describe hearing the deep tolling echo across the streets late at night, even when the building is empty and the weather is calm. Some claim that the bell follows patterns, sometimes ringing slowly and mournfully, other times in quick, deliberate sequences. Those who have investigated the bell often find the rope secured and the clapper at rest, yet the sound persists, leaving a lingering sense of unease. The intermittent ringing has led some parishioners to speculate that the bell signals the presence of spirits, calling attention to unseen visitors who remain devoted to the church long after death. Shadowy figures are also frequently observed within the sanctuary, most often near the altar. Witnesses describe dark, indistinct shapes kneeling in prayer, standing silently, or gliding slowly along the aisles. These figures often appear during evening hours when the church is empty, fading whenever anyone approaches. One longtime parishioner recounted staying late to prepare for a service, only to notice a dark figure kneeling at the front of the nave. When he moved closer, the shadow disappeared, leaving the pews empty but the air heavy with a palpable presence. Many speculate that these apparitions are former parishioners, bound to the church by devotion, repeating prayers and gestures from their lifetimes. Some have reported faint sounds accompanying the visual and physical phenomena. Soft murmurs resembling whispered prayers, the rustle of garments, and the quiet shuffle of footsteps often accompany the bell tolling or the movement of shadows. These sounds are usually subtle, easily missed by the casual observer, yet unmistakable to those who spend time in the empty church. They create an atmosphere that is both reverent and unnerving, a reminder that the church is alive with unseen activity long after the last congregant has departed. Despite its haunting reputation, Shiloh Baptist Church continues to serve the Tupelo community faithfully. Daytime services bring warmth, song, and fellowship, the pews filled with parishioners engaged in prayer and worship. Yet when darkness falls, the sanctuary transforms. Ghostly hands touch the pews, cold drafts follow visitors through the aisles. The bell tolls without warning, and shadowy figures kneel silently in prayer. For those who enter after hours, Shiloh Baptist becomes a bridge between the living and the unseen, a place where devotion, memory, and spirit endure in the quiet, candlelit halls. Visitors often leave the church with a sense of both awe and unease, aware that the building is more than a structure of brick and wood. Shiloh Baptist Church is a space where the echoes of past worshipers linger, where faith transcends death, and where the presence of the departed continues to touch, watch, and pray. It is a sanctuary that exists simultaneously in the world of the living and the realm of spirits, a testament to enduring devotion and the mysteries that remain just beyond the reach of human understanding. First Presbyterian Church in Natchez is a historic structure, its whitewashed walls and tall steeple standing as a silent witness to centuries of worship, community life, and history. By day, the church is alive with music, conversation, and sunlight streaming through stained-glass windows, illuminating the polished wooden pews and the altar in soft, colored light. Yet as night falls, the church takes on a markedly different character. Visitors and locals alike have reported a series of strange and unsettling occurrences. Phantom hymns echoing through the nave. Shadowy figures moving silently near the choir loft. The bell tolling without explanation. Mysterious lights appearing in the steeple, attracting those drawn to its supernatural mysteries. One of the most frequently reported experiences is the sound of phantom hymns. Those who remain in or near the church after dark often describe hearing the faint strains of music, as if a choir from another time is performing within the empty nave. The voices are soft but clear, layered in harmonies that seem impossibly pure for a space devoid of human presence. Sometimes the hymns rise and fall in waves, swelling to fill the sanctuary before fading into silence, only to return moments later. Visitors have recounted moments of sitting in the pews and hearing the familiar cadence of old worship songs, melodies that mirror those sung decades ago. Attempts to locate the source of the music are invariably futile. The sound seems to resonate from every corner of the nave simultaneously, yet no instruments or singers are present. The choir loft is another focal point for the church's hauntings. Shadowy figures are often reported moving silently among the pews and railings above, their forms dark and indistinct, almost blending with the shadows of the evening. Witnesses describe seeing figures rise, bow, or even turn as though acknowledging the presence of the living. Yet when approached, they vanish into the air. One late-night visitor, who had stayed behind to prepare hymnals for an upcoming service, reported glimpsing several silhouettes moving slowly near the loft. The figures appeared to follow patterns of long-forgotten rehearsals, mimicking gestures and positions that might have belonged to former choir members. The experience left the visitor with a profound sense of reverence, tinged with unease. As if the loft itself had become a stage for memories replayed across time. The church bell is another source of mystery. Suspended high in the steeple, the bronze bell is designed to ring during services and special occasions, yet locals have often reported hearing it toll spontaneously, even when no one is present and the weather is calm. The tolling can vary in rhythm and intensity, sometimes slow and mournful, other times brisk and deliberate. Investigations of the bell often reveal the rope securely fastened and the clapper at rest, yet the peals continue as if the bell itself is marking the presence of unseen congregants. Or commemorating events from the past, many who hear the tolling report feeling a sudden drop in temperature. A cold that lingers long after the sound has faded, leaving a tangible sense of otherworldly presence. a cold that lingers long after the sound has faded, leaving a tangible sense of otherworldly presence. Strange lights in the steeple add another layer to the church's haunting. Strange lights in the steeple add another layer to the church's haunting. Investigations of the bell often reveal the rope securely fastened and the clapper at rest. Locals frequently report flickering or glowing orbs visible through the upper windows of the tower, sometimes appearing in a rhythmic pattern, other times moving erratically. The lights are often seen late at night when the church is empty, and attempts to find a source, whether lanterns, reflections, or electrical faults, prove unsuccessful. Some speculate that the lights are manifestations of spirits drawn to the height of the steeple, observing the surrounding town or returning to the place where they once worshipped. Others suggest they are connected to the bell, illuminating the tower as if guiding the tolling to an unseen audience. The combination of sounds, shadows, and lights creates an atmosphere in which the past seems to coexist with the present. Footsteps echo unnaturally across the wooden floors, whispers accompany the phantom hymns, and the pews sometimes feel as though they are lightly brushed by unseen hands. Visitors describe a sense of being watched, as if the church itself is alive with the devotion and memories of those who came before. Some parishioners believe that these manifestations are spirits of former worshippers, lingering to continue their devotions or to maintain a presence within the sacred space. Others suggest that the phenomena are echoes of history, repeating patterns of worship and ceremony that have imprinted themselves upon the building. Despite the haunting occurrences, First Presbyterian Church remains a place of worship and community. Daytime services bring warmth, laughter, and song, filling the pews with parishioners and restoring the church to its familiar rhythm. Yet as darkness falls, the church transforms. Phantom hymns echo through the nave, shadowy figures glide silently near the choir loft, the bell tolls without explanation, and lights flicker mysteriously in the steeple. For those who venture into the church at night, the experience is one of awe and reverence, tinged with unease, a place where history, faith, and the supernatural converge. In the still, quiet halls, visitors often leave with a sense that the church is more than just a building, it is a repository of memory, devotion, and lingering presence. And it is in this mystical atmosphere that the church is more than just a building, it is a repository of memory, devotion, and lingering presence. And it is in this mystical atmosphere that the church is more than just a building, it is a repository of memory, devotion, and lingering presence. Visitors often leave with a sense that the church is more than just a building. It is a repository of memory, devotion, and lingering presence. And it is in this mystical atmosphere that the church is more than just a building, it is a repository of memory, devotion, and lingering presence. And it is in this mystical atmosphere that the church is more than just a building, it is a repository. Visitors often leave with a sense that the church is more than just a building. First Presbyterian Church in Natchez stands as a space where the sacred and the spectral coexist. St. Michaela's Catholic Church in Jackson stands as a testament to history and faith, its stately stone FAA section Ade and towering steeple overlooking streets that have witnessed centuries of change. Established on grounds steeped in local history, the church has long been a center of worship and community life. By day, sunlight filters through its stained glass windows, illuminating polished wooden pews and the altar where generations have knelt in prayer. Choirs practice their hymns, and parishioners gather for services and fellowship, filling the building with life and warmth. Yet when night falls and the streets grow silent, St. Michaela's transforms into a place where the line between the living and the unseen grows thin. Visitors and locals have long reported phenomena that defy explanation. Ghostly figures appearing near the pews, bells tolling mysteriously at odd hours, whispers that seem to emerge from nowhere, and sudden cold spots that chill the air. Perhaps the most commonly reported encounters are with the ghostly figures of parishioners. Witnesses describe dark, indistinct silhouettes appearing near the pews, sometimes seated, other times kneeling in prayer. These figures often mimic actions familiar from the living church, crossing themselves, bowing heads in devotion, or quietly shifting from one pew to another. Some parishioners have observed the figures rise and move in patterns reminiscent of past services, almost as if the church is replaying memories embedded within its walls. Approaching the apparitions often results in them vanishing before contact, leaving the witness with a profound sense of presence and an eerie chill that lingers long after the figures disappear. Many believe these spirits are former congregants, returning to continue their devotions or to remain near a place that was central to their lives. The church bell adds another layer to St. Michaela's haunting. Yet over the years, locals have reported hearing the bell toll at unexpected times, often when the church is empty and the night is still. The sound can vary from slow, mournful peals to quick, rhythmic tolls, echoing across the surrounding streets and through the hearts of those who hear it. Attempts to investigate the bell frequently reveal that the ropes are secured and the clapper at rest, leaving no logical explanation for the sounds. Witnesses often note that the bell tolls are accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature, creating a cold spot that seems to hover in the pews or along the aisles, intensifying the feeling that something otherworldly is present. Whispers often accompany these ghostly sightings and the tolling bell. Faint and indistinct, they seem to emanate from the corners of the nave or from above in the choir loft. Some describe hearing fragmented prayers, snippets of old hymns, or quiet murmurs resembling conversations long past. These whispers are subtle but unmistakable, often heightening the sense of unease as visitors move through the empty church. Many report that the whispers seem to respond to their movements, fading when attention is given to them and returning when stillness prevails, reinforcing the impression that the building itself is alive with memories and unseen activity. Cold spots are another persistent feature of St. Michaela's haunted reputation. Even on warm evenings, visitors frequently report sudden drops in temperature, localized areas where the air feels icy and heavy. These spots are often encountered near the pews, along the aisles, or at the altar, places where ghostly figures have been seen or where whispers have been heard. Some parishioners suggest that these cold spots mark the presence of spirits, manifestations of souls lingering in devotion or in quiet observation of the living. The chill is often accompanied by a feeling of weight, as if the unseen presence is watching, praying, or lingering near those who enter the church. The architecture of St. Michaela's enhances the haunting atmosphere. The high arched ceilings, polished wooden floors, and towering stained glass windows create a space where sound carries and shadows stretch unnaturally. Footsteps echo even when no one is present, and the flickering of candlelight seems to animate the shadows along the walls. Witnesses have reported seeing figures pause in these shadows, bowing their heads or kneeling in patterns consistent with decades-old rituals. The flickering of candlelight seems to animate the shadows along the walls. The chill is often accompanied by a feeling of weight, as if the unseen presence is watching, praying, or lingering near those who enter the church. It is as if the church itself preserves the devotion of those who came before, replaying gestures and movements that have become part of its spectral memory. Despite the haunting phenomena, St. Michaela's Catholic Church remains an active and vital part of the Jackson community. Daytime services bring song, prayer, and fellowship, restoring warmth and life to the sanctuary. Yet as darkness falls, the church transforms. Bells toll unexpectedly. Shadows of parishioners glide silently among the pews, whispers drift along the aisles, and cold spots settle where devotion once stood. For those who venture into the church after hours, St. Michaela's Catholic Church remains an active and vital part of the Jackson community. Michaela's becomes a space where history, faith, and the supernatural converge. Visitors often leave with a sense of awe, mixed with unease, aware that St. Michaela's is more than a building of stone and wood. It is a repository of memory, devotion, and lingering spirit, a place where the echoes of the past continue to interact with the present. The church stands as a bridge between the living and the departed, where ghostly parishioners continue to pray, watch, and move, ensuring that the history of faith remains tangible and enduring, long after the last service has ended. Mount Carmel Baptist Church in Greenwood stands quietly among the streets of its neighborhood, a historic sanctuary whose brick walls and tall steeple have witnessed generations of worship. By day, the church is alive with the sounds of hymnals, conversation, and footsteps along polished wooden floors. Sunlight streams through stained glass windows, casting a warm, multicolored glow over the pews, the altar, and the choir loft. Yet when evening falls, the building transforms into a place where the line between the living and the unseen grows thin. Visitors and locals have long reported strange occurrences. Ghostly children singing hymns in empty pews. Shadowy figures appearing at the altar. The bell tolling without explanation. Apparitions seemingly repeating old services night after night. Witnesses describe the voices as soft yet clear, echoing through the empty nave as if a choir of the departed has gathered. The melodies are familiar hymns, long sung by generations of parishioners, and they carry a haunting clarity that seems to fill every corner of the sanctuary. Many who hear the songs report feeling a mixture of awe and unease, as if the voices are both welcoming and warning. One visitor recounted entering the church after dark, only to hear the unmistakable sound of children singing in the pews. The voices seemed to move from row to row, rising and falling in harmony, yet when the observer approached, the pews were empty and the sound vanished, leaving only a chilling silence in its wake. Shadowy forms are another frequently reported occurrence. Often seen at the altar or near the choir loft, these figures are described as dark, indistinct silhouettes that move with deliberate purpose. Witnesses have observed the forms kneeling, bowing, or standing in positions reminiscent of past worshippers. Some parishioners claim the shapes repeat the movements of long-forgotten services, performing rituals and gestures that echo the devotion of those who once occupied the church. Approaching the figures often causes them to disappear instantly, leaving only the impression of presence and the lingering scent of old wood and candle wax. These shadowy forms are sometimes accompanied by cold drafts that sweep through the sanctuary, further reinforcing the feeling that unseen beings inhabit the space. The bell of Mount Carmel Baptist Church is also a source of mystery. Suspended high in the steeple, the bell has been reported to toll spontaneously, often at odd hours when the church is empty. The sound can vary in tempo and volume, sometimes slow and mournful, other times sharp and deliberate, echoing across the surrounding streets. Locals have recounted waking in the dead of night to the sound of the tolling, only to find no one in the church and the mechanism securely fastened. Some parishioners believe the bell announces the presence of spirits or marks the replaying of past services, while others suggest it is a manifestation of the church itself, resonating with memories of devotion and worship. The tolling is often accompanied by sudden drops in temperature, intensifying the sensation that the building is alive with unseen presences. Many witnesses report that the spirits seem to repeat old services nightly. From the choir loft to the altar, from the pews to the pulpit, the ghostly congregation is said to replay prayers, hymns, and rituals from decades past. Visitors who remain long enough sometimes hear the echo of sermons, the shuffle of robes, or the faint murmur of congregational responses. The experience is immersive and disorienting, blending sound, shadow, and cold in a way that makes it difficult to distinguish between past and present. Some parishioners believe that these nightly reenactments are acts of devotion, a form of worship that persists beyond death, ensuring that the church remains a place of spiritual energy and reverence. The architecture of Mount Carmel Baptist Church seems to amplify these phenomena. High-arched ceilings, polished wooden floors, and tall stained-glass windows create an environment where sound carries, shadows stretch unnaturally, and movements appear more deliberate than they should. Candlelight flickers across the pews and altar, animating the shadows in the corners and giving form to the unseen. Footsteps echo along the aisles even when no one is present, and the scent of old wood and incense often fills the air without explanation. It is as if the building itself preserves the devotion and memories of those who once worshipped within its walls, replaying them for anyone willing to listen and observe. Despite the haunting reputation, Mount Carmel Baptist Church continues to serve its congregation faithfully. Daytime services bring warmth, song, and community, filling the pews with parishioners of all ages. Yet as dusk falls and the streets grow quiet, the church transforms. Ghostly children sing hymns in empty pews, shadowy figures kneel and bow at the altar. The bell tolls inexplicably, and the echoes of past services replay in the sanctuary. For those who venture inside after hours, Mount Carmel becomes a space where history, faith, and the supernatural converge, a place where the devotion of the departed endures alongside the living. Visitors often leave the church with a profound sense of awe and unease. Mount Carmel Baptist Church is more than a building. It is a repository of memory, worship, and spirit, a place where the faithful and the unseen share the same sacred halls. The echoes of devotion continue to resonate through the nave and pews, reminding all who enter that in this historic church, the past never truly sleeps, and the spirits of those who once worshipped here remain an enduring presence, watching, singing, and praying long after the last light has faded. Trinity Baptist Church in Vicksburg stands as one of the city's oldest places of worship, its whitewashed walls and steeple a familiar landmark along quiet streets. By day, the church is a place of community and devotion, filled with the sound of hymnals, soft conversation, and the rustle of parishioners moving along polished wooden floors. Sunlight streams through the tall stained glass windows, casting patterns of color over the pews and altar, creating an atmosphere of warmth and reverence. Yet as dusk falls and the streets grow silent, Trinity Baptist transforms. The building becomes a place where shadows move of their own accord, where the bell tolls unpredictably, and where visitors feel the lingering gaze of unseen presences. Locals and parishioners alike speak of experiences that defy explanation, as shadowy figures gliding silently through the nave, bells ringing when no one is present, and a sensation of being watched long after the congregation has departed. One of the most commonly reported phenomena involves the shadowy figures that roam the sanctuary. Witnesses describe dark, indistinct forms moving slowly along the aisles or near the altar, their shapes almost blending with the dim light of the church at night. These figures appear deliberate in their movements, sometimes pausing to kneel in the pews or at the altar, as though engaged in silent prayer. Many parishioners have recounted moments when the shadows seem to follow them as they move through the nave, disappearing instantly when approached. Some believe these figures are the spirits of former congregants, bound to Trinity Baptist by devotion, repeating gestures and prayers from their lifetimes. Others speculate that the figures are echoes of past services, memories imprinted upon the building that continue to play out in spectral form long after the last worshiper has gone. The church bell is another focal point of Trinity Baptista's haunting. Mounted high in the steeple, the large bronze bell is intended to mark the hours of worship and special occasions. Yet residents in the surrounding area frequently report hearing it toll at odd hours, often in the dead of night when no one is present in the building. The bell's tolls vary, sometimes slow and mournful, other times sharp and deliberate, and echo across the quiet streets of Vicksburg. Those who have investigated the bell often find the rope secured and the clapper at rest, yet the sound persists, unnerving neighbors and visitors alike. Many believe the bell serves as a signal or announcement from the unseen, a reminder that the presence of the past still lingers within the church walls. Some parishioners say that the tolling is accompanied by sudden drops in temperature, cold spots that intensify the feeling that the building itself is alive with unseen watchers. Visitors often speak of a tangible presence in the church, a sensation that extends beyond shadows or sound. Even in the absence of visible figures, many describe a heavy feeling of being observed, a subtle pressure that seems to follow them through the aisles. Some parishioners have reported hearing faint whispers or echoes of prayers, soft and indistinct, as though the spirits themselves are murmuring in devotion or warning. The sensation can be unsettling, particularly in the quiet of an empty sanctuary, where every sound is amplified and every movement seems noticed. These experiences leave a lasting impression, a sense that Trinity Baptist is a place where the living and the dead coexist, each aware of the other. High arched ceilings, polished wooden floors, and the tall, narrow stained glass windows create an environment where sound carries unnaturally. And shadows stretch across the sanctuary in ways that defy expectation. Candlelight flickers along the walls, animating corners where figures have been seen. And footsteps echo long after the last parishioner has departed. A sense of foreboding settles over the empty church. Witnesses have reported glimpsing shapes pause in these shadows, bowing their heads or kneeling in patterns consistent with old services. Some suggest that the church itself preserves memories of worship, replaying the devotion of past congregants in spectral form for those who remain late at night. Despite the eerie reputation, Trinity Baptist Church continues to serve its congregation faithfully. Daytime services bring warmth, fellowship, and music, restoring the building to its familiar rhythm. Yet when night falls, the church becomes a different place entirely. Shadowy figures glide silently through the nave, the bell tolls unpredictably, and a lingering presence watches, unseen but undeniably felt. Visitors who remain after dark often describe a mixture of awe and unease, sensing that the church is alive with memory, devotion, and the spirits of those who once called it home. Trinity Baptist Church is more than a building of brick and wood. It is a repository of faith and memory, a space where the living and the departed intersect. The echoes of past worship continue to resonate through the pews and aisles. The shadows of former congregants move through the sanctuary, and the bell tolls in solemn reminder that the past never truly fades. For those who enter after hours, Trinity Baptist offers a glimpse into a world where devotion transcends death, and where spirits continue to pray, watch, and linger long after the last service has ended. Each church tells a story of faith, loss,